Excellent. Looks like we are live at MythVision Podcast. Remember, the end is near. And if you don't believe me, well, be an eyewitness for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, we are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I have Dr. Jennifer Bird again. How are you?
I'm all right, Derek. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. I need people to know my birthday is tomorrow. I might mention that a few times, just plugging it away. You know,
Okay.
I'm kind of proud that I survived the crucifixion at age 33. I am a living swoon theory, in case people were wondering, you know, obviously.
What? A living what theory?
The swoon theory. You ever heard of the swoon theory that Jesus survived the crucifixion?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like a hypothesis that claims, like, well, you know, it's more plausible than him actually rising from the dead, literally. So this is why there's some academics in the rationalist school of thought that actually tried to say that. And of course, you know,
right.
I just wanted to point out my crucifixion. You know, I survived it.
Okay. So does that mean you're 34 or something?
It means I'm turning 34. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
I love it.
Pretty tough stuff. So I just
it's a big year. It's a big number. Yeah.
It's a big
crucifixion number. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is. It's a big deal what happened to me. Jennifer Bird is an East Coaster by upbringing, up undergrad and graduate schools. Dr. Bird has taught in New Jersey, Texas, Tennessee, North Kakalaki, where I'm at right now, and Oregon, and is currently a visiting assistant professor of religious studies at Hollins University. On the side, she carves out time for speaking and writing on marriage and the Bible. Her background within the United Methodist Church, education in a Presbyterian-affiliated institution, time spent in several ministerial contexts, and 30 years of teaching in classrooms of all kinds, all inform her approach to having quite honest, sometimes difficult, conversations about what is actually to be found in the scriptures of the Christian Bible. No question, her favorite conversations include gender, sexuality, and marriage, what the Bible does and does not say about them. You have a BS in mathematics, education minor at Virginia Tech in 1994, Master of Divinity, Princeton Theological Seminary 2001, and a PhD in the New Testament and early Christianity at Vanderbilt University in 2007. And so you have a work history. I'll skip that just to let you know. Yeah.
Not necessary.
Yeah. So, you know, we had a little phone conversation while I was trying to fix my irrigation in my front yard.
Oh, is that what?
I'm sweating and I'm like.
I could tell that something was going on, but I wasn't quite sure.
But I'm thinking to myself, redefining God is an interesting conversation.
Okay, good.
And I didn't know what you were going to bring to the table, and I don't want to hog the conversation or to try to steer it in a direction you didn't have planned. So I want to follow your lead tonight.
Okay. And I'm going to try to be a little bit slower tonight. I have a tendency to get really excited and start talking really fast, and then then we just kind of get going, and that isn't always as productive as maybe being kind of grounded, you know.
It's okay. I get excited too, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, I think one of the reasons I actually asked if we could have this conversation is I have been seeing quite a few podcast titles from yours and also the Gnostic Informant and some others out there. And then I even saw a clip from Stephen Colbert's show, and he had Ricky Gervais on, right? And of course we all know, or if you know who Ricky Gervais is, it's not a big surprise, right? That he's going to have represent an atheistic perspective, or maybe a naturalist or a scientific, whichever way you want to look at that. But whenever I see those conversations taking place, I always think, the thing is, we're not getting to the root of why. We're not getting to the root of what's going on here in this conversation. And I think that it can be a little bit more complex. And of course, on the Colbert Show, he's not going to get in. He probably isn't going to have a theologian on to have a deep dive conversation about it.
Yeah.
Right. But people that are watching your channel, I think, are interested in a little bit more meat to that conversation, a little more, some food for thought that's a little bit beyond the arguments that go back and forth, or I'm going to try to disprove your belief, or, that kind of thing. I don't think it's as productive.
Appeal to you, and it's not something that appeals to me. Is I get caught up in it from time to time when it's someone like a fundamentalist. I admit,
Sure.
But when I sit back and actually think about this, why? Why do we think these things? Why do we want to believe? Why do we have gods in our thought process? I try to empathize as someone who's trying to look for an answer, but also is not trying to boil everything down to a chemistry pot of just chemicals that react. You know what I mean? Because
Totally, yeah.
you fall into this category where you realize, all right, if all there is the natural world, right? We still love fiction. I love mythology. And so if as a naturalist, the God category within my mind is that kind of fictional something beyond reality, okay, that's cool. Like, I get it. Like, that's fine. As long as I'm, it's not hurting anybody. But I also say the same thing for people who really do think that there is a God and have a God category in their mind and whatnot. If they're not harming people, I have nothing to say in a negative way. I want to try and believe as many true things as possible.
Okay.
But I also am not interested in, I'm not interested in antagonizing everybody. I want to be one of those guys who says he's an atheist, but also gives a good rap. Where you're not like, here's this guy again. He's going to say the same thing he says every week on every call-in show when someone calls in, and he's just antagonistic to people of faith. I'm not that guy. I'm a teddy bear. And so in terms of that, I really try to empathize, because I was a drug addict. I always use my personal experience. I don't mock drug addicts.
Right.
I know what it's like to be stuck and to not know how to escape. And I do equate some forms of religion, cult-like ones, to my addiction experience, and realizing they don't know that they're hurting. They don't know they're in a bad ideology and it's really hurting them. They think they're right. They think they're in the right path. And what do? You idiot.
Yeah, that helps no one.
Yeah, it helps nobody. And so I think your Ricky Gervais, you probably saw some type of respectful dialogue, but also
I did. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, people are still in two different places. So kind of the starting point, we're starting in different places and trying to assert they're both, each person is trying to assert that they're correct, or in this case, they were just very respectfully having a conversation. Right. But the thing is, I feel like there's more common ground, or there's some sort of bridge that's actually there that people aren't given a chance to consider, or something like that. I don't know. And this is where I think I want to go into talking about going into those slides to talk through a couple.
Let me know when, and I'll pop
Yeah,
up.
let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and that first slide on the definition of atheism.
Okay, let's hit next.
Let's get into it, shall we? Okay. See, so I think of, the piece I'm interested in putting out there about this is there are many. So one of them is when I hear someone say that, let me do what you've done, starting with my experience, because I've been doing this long enough. I end up getting a reputation on campus, whichever campus I'm teaching on, right? So I have students on the first day of class say, we go over the syllabus, we go over everything. And at the end of first class, they're like, so are you an atheist? And and I'm like, you know what? Questions are welcome, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if you are still wondering that question at the end of the semester, circle back to me. We'll do it in class, right? But the reason I say that to them is because when they are asking me, and sometimes I try to talk about it briefly, it's just too much to do on the first day or whatever. But when they're asking that, what are they asking, right? What does a student in, a 20-year-old sitting in a university, a classroom who's about to go through a semester with this professor, what does she actually worry about? Right? Because she's worried, actually. If she's asking, most of them are only asking if they're worried. So they're worried that I don't believe in the God that this book pertains to, right?
You're trying to indoctrinate them to become what you are or whatever.
Right. And that I'm going to be trying to trick them to not believe the Bible. Right. So one of the things, so don't answer the question on the first day, because the conversation I want to have with them about their question is, when you say to me, Dr. Bird, are you an atheist? I want to say, are you aware that you're asking me if I believe in the God that's described in the Bible? That's what you're actually asking. You're not actually asking me if I believe in a deity. You're asking, you're concerned about protecting the faith tradition you've been a part of. You're concerned about, your framework, your family, your whatever. And you don't want a different perspective on the Bible to take you away from all of that.
I agree with you. I had the very first person who ever spoke to me about comparing religions and comparing mythology from the Bible and other myths. I got the gist something wasn't, I got the gist this guy wasn't in the faith bubble. And I was like, can I ask you a question? And he's like, sure. Now, I'm already willing, but I'm afraid. I remember my experience of really being afraid. And I said, are you an atheist? Do you not believe in God? And he was so careful in his response because he knew he was tampering with somebody who is sensitive. I am so sensitive to this. So I'm glad you didn't answer that. But he finally responded, Derek, I do not want to be a liar, because he wanted to keep the conversation going. I want to be honest with you.
Right.
I do not believe in a God, but I just want you to hear these comparative. I don't care if you do and I don't. It doesn't matter. That's not my goal. I want you to hear this data. And that's when I felt a sense of empathy from him. Like he wasn't this guy trying to shove non-belief down my throat. It actually was enough for me to listen. And once I started listening, I'm in trouble. I started to go, what? Well, from the bubble I was in.
Yeah. And by the way, I've had a handful of students, just 2 or 3 classes out of the dozens, right? Near 100 classes probably I've taught over the years that have circled back at the end of the semester to have the conversation. We have a great time, talking about like the God that's talked about in this Testament, whichever one we're studying. No, I actually do not believe in the one described in the Bible. And I actually hope that you don't either. But I needed to go through that whole semester of walking through different passages with you so that we could look at why, right? So back to the conversation, this term, atheism, right? One of the things that I want to bring to people's attention for reconsidering about this whole conversation is even the label atheism places a belief in a God, places deistic language as normative, because this is defined contrary to a positive view of God, right? The word atheism, take the word, the A is the negation, like the word itself, same with agnostic, it is a negation of a thing. And that thing is within Western traditions, within the monotheistic traditions, and even within, like Hinduism or whatever, the premise that's normative is the belief in gods. So those who don't align with that are labeling themselves with something negative right out of the gate, right? So the lack of belief, I'm pulling these from Merriam-Webster, by the way. I know that there's a range of, probably a range, but this was an easy way for me to just work with this with you. The lack of belief, right? Or a strong disbelief in the existence of a God or any gods. Well, that's why when I posed it to you, I said, let's redefine God. And you said what I thought was really appropriate. You're like, there's too much baggage with that word God, right?
Right.
And I get that. And so this conversation from my perspective is, okay, while I do get that, I still know that people are, it might be really helpful for some people if they could redefine and have a different understanding or a different mental framework that they associate with God for themselves, right? And then they can move into a different way of imagining that or thinking about it or relating to or whatever. So I fully agree with you in terms of maybe it's just, it is too much. There's too much baggage. There's too much history that's been done with that word in association with that word. And I get that, right? I respect that stance.
Just so you know, like I'm going to just let me know and I'll pop back up.
Okay. Yeah.
You can actually see us and enjoy this.
No, I would get that. Yeah.
I pulled up on Google the definition of God.
Did you?
Of God, right?
Okay.
And this is the two top ones, right? So the first one, of course, includes monotheistic religions. In Christianity and other monotheistic religions, the creator and ruler of the universe and source of all moral authority, the supreme being. And then number two is, in certain other religions, a superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, a deity, a moon god as an example, etc. So and then then it goes into like exclamations like, oh God, God, what did I deserve? It's not even a term used for an actual deity. It just becomes like a slogan or a term when you're angry. God, why did you do that? But yeah, like that's why I said it has so much baggage, because when we think the category of God, I think it's an outdated category. I think it's a really outdated category. Exactly.
But the thing is, and again, it's not like you don't know this or the people watching this don't know this, right? But it's almost so much a part of culture or just givens, and the fact that people would say, oh God, in lots of different contexts, whether it's out of frustration or sometimes in other situations. But I'm just, that
I totally understood what you meant by that. So
yeah, okay. I'm trying to be a little more,
I know.
appropriate. But the thing is, it's outdated in terms of what people think it is a referent to, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that it is pointing to is what's outdated, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to agree with me on that. But so let's go back to the agnostic. Let's go back to the next definition, just to kind of make sure we're walking through this a little bit. Yeah, just the first one on that. So agnosticism, then, again, I love to do this in person when you put a word on the board and then you pull it apart, right? Pull apart words is very fun. And then that's why Greek and Latin was just really helpful things to study if you want to be like, look into this stuff. So agnosticism, so A in front of the Gnostic. And of course, many people here are already familiar with this, but the word Gnostic comes from the word gnosis, which is knowledge, right? So agnostic is saying we cannot. So there are two different variations in Merriam-Webster, and I thought it was interesting that this one was first. The view that any ultimate reality is unknowable. What I wanted to say when you were reading the definitions for God is, oh my God, how much are those definitions influenced by monotheistic traditions, the assumptions behind them, right? But same here. The belief that something is unknowable. Wow. I don't know about you, Derek, but that reminds me of when people say God's ways are higher than ours. Like we can't possibly know God. Well, okay. Except that the whole premise of this religion is based on actually knowing this God, like having a relationship. So let's be, but if you go to the next slide, it has the second definition of agnosticism, which I think more people are kind of in tune with who might be following this, which is doubting that we can know whether there is a God, right? And I think I personally think it's a very honest stance. We can't know. I mean, that's actually true, right? We can't know. And I know that people will say to me, and I've had people say to me, and I used to say, well, of course I know. I believe it in my soul. I know it to be true. That's not the same thing. That's actually saying I believe it to be true. Right. So we can't actually know. We can put these away for now, I think, and we might come back to that next slide, maybe. But so Okay. So then there are a couple of things, what we've talked about, or what I think frustrates me, to restate this again, is the conversation about God is, sorry, no, I was just thinking of those labels, those two labels of atheism and agnosticism, put the belief in God is normative. And if you don't, then you are negative. There's
Right.
something negative associated with you, instead of, right. Okay. Instead of a different starting point.
It's almost like we should come up with a new term, because
Exactly.
it pigeonholes people like me, because I am an optimistic. Like, you have
Exactly.
no clue how excited I am to figure out fiction and mythology and stories. And I love this stuff. And I
Yeah.
wonder if I love it more than the believers, because,
Exactly.
but I'm being pigeonholed as he's one of those atheists.
Yes.
Like,
And he's dangerous. He's going to steal your
right.
belief. Yeah.
But the other thing you pointed out that is a flaw, I think, that happens with atheism is oftentimes we're typically responding to monotheistic Abrahamic religions.
Exactly.
And I have a good friend, Avaros, who will pop in once in a while. He has this criticism, like, you're arguing against the biblical God again. No problem. He's easy to debunk. Got it.
Right.
But like, just the category of something as a mind, or as something beyond us that is the reason for existence or whatever, I once again still fall in the category of saying, yeah, I just don't see it. I'm not convinced. But my experiences are profound in this world that I live in, and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know with certainty that there isn't something.
Right.
But we're always attacking. It's like this back and forth attack.
Exactly.
What do we do? Where's that bridge you're talking about?
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I do think it would be good for us to talk a little bit more about why people do believe in this God, right? Or and I don't want to be dismissive of polytheistic traditions. I do come from a Christian tradition. I come from that background, and that's the framework I have in my head. So maybe you and I can just agree that we might be talking in terms of monotheistic traditions, but the same premises apply if you have multiple gods going on in your worldview. Is that fair? Or
I think it's fair.
I just want to be respectful of the variety out there, right?
Right.
But yeah, and you and I chatted about this briefly. Why do people, let's just put it in terms of the biblical God, the monotheistic God that's described in the Hebrew Bible, the First Testament for Christians, and is referenced in the Quran, right? Why do people want to believe in that God?
Well, if we're taking a historical approach,
okay,
this is like, obviously, why did monotheism become interesting to polytheists? And you kind of wonder, I kind of wonder, is there a psychological reason for like you're special if you found this one, and like all like God-fears, for example, right? If we're using that analogy, I'm saying specifically this one, because if we're not talking about polytheism, I think there was kind of an interest of saying like, no, this one's more powerful than all of them. Why are you visiting the temple of Asclepius and Zeus and Apollo and Athena? Screw all that. Those are just, false gods, and they'll be defeated in the end. The true God we have. And aren't you wanting to be special? This one God. I think there's something interesting about being unique in this one thing, when you can go in and out of any of these temples. But I wonder if that's the origin. There's also, it seems, a psychological satisfaction to the idea that one-stop shop, baby, it's all here and you got it. I suspect, I don't know. I mean, I was raised in this culture with Christianity. So I don't know if I'm accurate here, because it's like being born in water and then having other fish say, by the way, did you know we're wet and we live in water? It's like,
like, what is that?
Yeah. I don't know.
I live it and breathe it. I don't know what you're talking about.
But what have you found like to be the interest?
Well, I think because I come at this conversation through the lens of what people do with the Bible in any particular conversation. So I think of it in terms of this collection gives some certainty because it has some conversations about the way God behaves. And in both testaments, there are a handful of rules laid down for how you interact with this God or how you live what is considered moral at the time. Right. So I think that's part of it. there's something really nice in having some answers, having some, this is who God is, having that all in this. We can turn to this collection. The fact that this collection, at least for Christians, is referred to as God's word. So that brings in all those other conversations about, the inspired nature, or the belief in the inspired nature of Scripture and all of that, that this is my way of communicating with God. So please don't take that away from me, as compared to, I'd like to invite you to think more critically about it.
Right.
Right. So the idea of God is comforting, right? This, you mentioned this, the idea of we come into the world with some form of overseers, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this thing in us that it is really comforting, and in particular, perhaps as we get older, right, to think, when in those moments, really trying moments, right, to think of there still being some sort of cosmic parent,
Right.
who's going to right, give us a big hug, tell us they love us, and make everything okay, at least for a moment. I mean, I think there's something to that people are drawn to, right?
Right. I think so. I mean, there's a lot. It's like an onion with layers of various things, I think, that make it appealing. And so it's not that easy to define or just simplify, whatever. But I do think there is that we were raised with people who controlled our lives, and it's a comforting notion of having a parent nearby or someone who's a protector nearby.
Yes.
Not a far leap to think that there's a heavenly father or something, a heavenly mother or a divine goddess or a divine father, whatever. Maybe many, a whole family of gods, doesn't matter, but they're all out there to look out for you. You got to do the right thing and make sure you do this or do that or whatever. Because if you're not, you get disciplined in real life, don't you? I mean, so why wouldn't the gods do the same thing? And so I think that the God category, or gods, as we've been talking about them defined, are reflection and observation of our experience as humans and the natural world that we live in. And so we've just kind of connected dots. Man, that volcano came up. That God is angry. He's mad. Like, look what happened to Pompeii, I can't imagine everybody wasn't saying the gods were pissed off. Billy Bob shouldn't have sacrificed to that other god. Like,
they were all looking for who did what.
Exactly. And obviously we can look back and go, wow, that was a bit primitive, but we shouldn't just mock and scoff. We should understand the development as a fossil in our thinking.
Exactly.
And how is this category needing to be redefined and maybe useful now?
Yes.
Maybe naturalists, I'm just thinking, maybe I could be wrong, but I'm thinking maybe naturalists are a little bit ahead of their time on how society at large can handle the idea of maybe there isn't any parents. Maybe there's not a parent that's metaphysically looking out. Maybe we are all we have in terms of this. And so that's scary, though.
I was just going to say, for a lot of people, that's just scary, right?
It's scary. I was afraid. I knew the implication. I didn't want to cross that bridge. I was not interested in coming to the conclusion I did. It took a long time for me to really be able to find a way to be comfortable with thinking maybe, just maybe, there aren't any gods. That was so scary, Jennifer. I can't even tell you how scary.
I actually can relate.
I'm just speaking. I'm like, So you come from the same, in terms of that, you may not have come all the way to that conclusion. You're probably more agnostic. I'm predicting here, but it's either way. It doesn't matter. I don't know.
Well, do I need to
circle back?
Do I need to reveal? I don't know. Do I need to reveal?
I don't think you do yet.
Okay.
I think. Do I need to get to the next slide or
not yet? No.
Okay.
Because I do want to say, one of the things that what you were talking about reminds me of is, of course, at the beginning of Genesis, when it says God creates human in God's image. And I'm sure you're well familiar with the phrase, but actually what ends up happening, right, are people make gods in their image. Right. And that is a reflection of what you were saying, that who we are and our experiences, we, in a sense, project into this mystical world, or the cosmic level or something, or, maybe thinking of the heavenly realms as maybe not the way we see the multiverses now, right? Because they had a limited understanding of the multiverses, right? But they saw the sky and they saw the stars, and that was just it. And so gods are hanging out up there somehow, and this, and then come and visit or whatever.
Wasn't it Xenophon, the philosopher, I believe, who said if horses could draw images of their gods, they would look like horses,
Exactly.
Yeah, and on and on. So yeah, I think that the people really believed, though, that it was really the gods. It started with the gods, and then it came down on us. Because why are we experiencing this? Why does it seem this way?
Well, I do agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they think the other way, even though we would say, really, it was the mind of the man.
Yeah.
Projecting, because nature was here before him.
Right.
They're thinking that it's that way instead of the other.
Exactly. And because there are things that they can't explain, right? So it's part of why we have myths, to give some sort of playful or some sort of explanation. But before a scientific, era, when they didn't understand why the moon turned red last week, right? That's freaking, I mean, fill in the blank on that, right?
Billy Bob, you shouldn't have sacrificed to that day. I'm just kidding.
Right. What are you gonna, so, and when you go through famine year after year, like that's a misery I've never known. And that, like, why is this happening to us? Right. I mean, that's a level of wanting to have some sort of reason, some sort of source or something to say, where's the thing that we've upset? Like, why, what's upset in the balance here?
I imagine that would be the natural thought. Like, what did I do wrong? And that's exactly what Job is all about. So if I may, just to let everybody know, in the chat, your super chats will get recognized. We are in the midst of the process.
The primary stuff. And then we'll get to you. Yeah.
We're going to come to you. Don't worry. I promise.
We will. It's funny. I should see how much. It's so fun to talk with you about these things. So maybe I should move ahead a little bit faster.
I'm following you. We are here.
No, okay. This is good.
My birthday is tomorrow. So like, I gotta have fun today, because tomorrow I'm not thinking about MythVision. I am focusing on my babies.
Yeah.
We're gonna go sacrifice that to that altar. No, I'm just kidding.
You're gonna do a little barbecue out back.
Maybe.
Well, but that's also, like, the way God is talked about in the Hebrew Bible, and similar to other traditions, right? Is when we do something wrong, we've upset God, and the way we make God happy is what? We take a life and cook it on a barbecue because it smells good. They literally say
God smells it.
The scent is pleasing, right? Like, I'm a vegetarian and I still love the scent of a barbecue. Are you kidding? It smells great. Like, so the way God is talked about is very anthropomorphic. Gods take the form of anthropos, which is a human, right? We project onto them. We talk about them that way. And sometimes we project onto them are the best notions of the things we would like to be like. And sometimes it's our fears or our whatever, like when you look at some of the pantheons that have a range of parts of the world, right, that the gods are in charge of, right? So there's something helpful in this moment before scientific awareness to be able to this is how we make sense of the world, right?
Right.
Okay, so maybe moving on then to the thing.
You want me to move on here?
Yeah, we can go to the next one. And maybe I should have put these all on different slides, but the next slide brings up the term Theodicy. I don't know. Are you familiar with this term?
Yeah,
you probably
absolutely.
are. Yeah. Okay. You're like, yeah. So this particular definition, again, we could probably, but this is a good one, I think. The defense of God's goodness and omnipotence in view of the existence of evil. So one of the things there, of course, is the belief that there's a God who is omnipotent and all good, or all good, or all knowing and all powerful, and all those alls, all the omnis, right? Like, I should point out, lots of people for a long time didn't believe that there was one single God who was that. The belief in a God who is in charge of everything or powerful over everything, that took centuries to develop, right? Millennia, really, to develop. So it's let me just say this. Part of the struggle here is that so many of the issues for people of faith that come out of this premise that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good. They come out of this belief that God is in charge of everything. God does have a plan. God is going to see all this through for God's glory, or God won't give you more than you can handle, and all of these things. And all of these misinformed claims come out of needing to keep the God that's talked about in the Christian Bible alive. When people have something tragic happen to them, what do people say? What did you do wrong? Or God, or if it's awful, loss of a child, like people will go to, God's with you through this, or some sort of, I'm losing track of what
I'll give you an example of my friend who overdosed and died just recently from like about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. His family, his sister called and could barely make a word out. I'm not saying anything but supporting. She just said, well, he was too good for this world, and God knew that if he stayed, he would suffer more. So he took him this way so he didn't have a more miserable life. I just said, you're right. And I just agree with her. Well, like, what can you say? What kind of asshole, nice. I would never. And nice. I just said, you know what, you're right, because I saw the satisfaction in what she said, even as someone who doesn't believe this God exists. And I saw that satisfaction, even if it's a noble lie. I don't, I just said, you know what, you're right. But one thing I knew that was true, and I kept repeating to her, was he's not suffering anymore. That was what I told her. And it was just so comforting for her to hear, because I know the addiction. I know how suffering, like you're stuck. I don't know how to describe this. It is beyond morals. Sure, your morals, degrade.
Yeah, it's not about morals. And it drives me crazy.
Beyond, you do bad things. Yeah, but there's something sick in the mind.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe.
Addictions are just beyond that. It's not a morality conversation.
I just wanted to use that as another example, though.
No, it's great. And it's a great example. When people say, God needed an angel in heaven, or, all those awful things. I appreciate actually your example, and that you were compassionate with your friend's sister.
I would never not be.
I mean, I think that's important, right?
Right.
But I guess I have all these students, term after term, semester after semester, who are defending these different ways, these different things about God that's described in the Bible. God is unleashing unspeakable wrath on his own people. And we could talk about the pronoun there that I use, which is biblical. Right? Like,
that's why I put the image on the thumbnail. I know. Of course, it's a white male deity who's ruling everything. I wanted it to be that on purpose, so that people could kind of see, like, the concept of God you're trying to get at would be beyond the scopes of pigmentation, the scopes of gender, the scopes of
body. Beyond body. Right? Yeah. So I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
I screwed you up.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. I'm just not. I feel like I'm not as focused in, because I'm just trying to talk about this. I think I have when people want to defend the depiction of God in the Bible, right? That's, to me, when you do that, that leads to, when something tragic happens, you are programmed to need to find the meaning in it. For instance, because you've been told that God has a plan, you've been told that God isn't going to give you more than you can handle. You can told that, that God's ways are beyond ours. So who are you to question God's plan for you that included the loss of your child or something awful, right? It's the fact that this premise is here first, and that people are trying to find these ways of defending it, instead of what I think to be a really powerful and helpful approach to things, which is what Siddhartha Gautama came up with, right? When he's like, guess what? Suffering is a part of life, so let's figure out how to manage that, shall we? That's the thing. It isn't that all life is suffering. I mean, people misunderstand Buddhism when they say those kinds of things. It's very common. No, suffering is a part of life, period.
Right.
It's not, sickness, death, disfiguring of accidents. Like, that is a part of life, and stop trying to make that part meaningful. What is meaningful is how you manage it, how you move through it, instead of who you try to blame for it happening. And that for me is why I want to redefine God. I don't want God to be the one who's causing this crap to happen to you and people you love, and sitting back and say, so now what are you going to do with that one, sucker? Like, that's not helpful. And
you are hilarious.
I try. Glad you think so.
Sucker.
Yeah, but that's just it. The God that people are taught within most, not all, most Christian traditions, right? That people are taught that God needs to be praised. Does God have a weak ego? Like, why does God need to be praised? Well, we as humans often, not everyone, but often have this desire inside to be grateful to something when things are good. Like when we have this overwhelming sense of joy and gratefulness, we'd like it to be directed somewhere, perhaps, right? I get that all the time, right? But that's, that doesn't mean that there's a God that needs to hear that from us, that needs us to thank him. That doesn't have to be the way we make sense of that part of our human existence, right?
Right.
And
this might be why I work a lot with Gnostic Informant, my buddy Neil.
Yeah.
If you ask him, anyone off the record, if he's not watching this right now, ask him how often I tell him I love him and like I appreciate him and that like he's my brother. Ask him. Okay. And he will tell you, like, I don't tell this publicly, but I decided to, just because you said, like, what are we thinking? I'm now thinking the things I can know for sure, like from my experience and the people in my life. I used to do it to God and pray all the time. Now it's like, hold on, I'm not going to have them forever. Like, I'm not going to have these people. So I'll show these little things. And sometimes I think Neil, if he's not watching this, you'll get a laugh. Sometimes I think Neil's like, yo, is everything all right, bro? Are you dying? Are you dying? Like, and I'm like, no, bro, like I've lost a lot of good friends and brothers in my life, like people that I considered very, very close. And I just want you to know I appreciate you. He's like, oh, I appreciate you too, bro. But he's like a little awkward, like
a little
he's not
uncomfortable.
used to it, probably. He's not used to it. Yeah.
But you're redirecting, right? You're taking that love or that appreciation or something and giving it, in a sense, to the people who need to hear it.
Right.
That's a productive use of that, I think, right?
I think so. I mean,
yeah.
It's not like I'm cooking this animal on a grill and saying, God, how do you enjoy that? Well, I'll just take the small portion of that. The rest of it goes to waste because you're somehow eating it, and I don't know how, but metaphysically through the smoke or something, I don't know. But like no, like I would rather cook it and then say, children of Israel, come and all of you feast and enjoy the meal.
Yep.
Why are they starving over here and taking the little lamb that they brought in, that they worked their whole life trying to make sure it's okay in order to have it just that's outdated.
That's the part that's outdated. I agree with you. Yeah, that's the part that's outdated. I want to make sure I hit. So I was trying to, and I think I already said this, but let me just make sure I'm clear about it. That what's sad to me then is that people will end up losing their faith because of this framework, right? They've had this community that's been really important to them. Or their family, all believes, all goes to whichever religious, community, and something awful happens to them that they can't rectify the way that community is talking about it, because that community is saying, God's got this, whatever, right? God's on it, and God, whatever. And this person's saying, no, that's not okay with me for God to have been okay with that. I am out.
Yeah,
and so,
it's a house of cards that they've created.
Right. And it's the premise, right? It's the description of the God that is unsustainable. Right. And okay, let's go to the slide real quick. Oh, wait, no, we just did that. Did we just do Theodicy?
We did Theodicy, but I don't know if there's another.
We didn't. No, this is it. But I just want to make sure I don't think I touched on it well enough. That's why I'm like, wait, we didn't. Because this is why when we have this awareness, right? Defense of God's goodness and omnipotence. Who said that God is all powerful? Who says that?
Right.
Like what does that mean? That, like when you read the philosophers and the theologians over the centuries, I mean, they have these really great conversations based on this claim that someone made that's just jacked up, which is that God is all powerful. What the fuck? No, where did you get that? Right? That's the problem. The claim, the way that God is being defined is the problem, not reality, not the things that are going on around us. It's the fact that we've said that God is all powerful, God is all good. What if we call God something else? What if we define God radically differently in a way that allows everyone to still have some sort of community? If you need the concept of a God, if you need the God language and all that, like, what if we chose a different way of going about this? And that's where I want to throw an idea out to you, which is there was a philosopher, Alfred Whitehead, who was a scientist, and he was tired essentially of the monotheistic tradition's way of making sense of the world. And so he decided to essentially bring in some sort of updated language and updated engagement with the world. And it was philosophical. It was strictly philosophical, but it got picked up by theologians pretty early on. And so there's a segment of theology called process theology. You're familiar with it?
I actually interviewed this is the first time, last week, 3 scholars on process theology.
Oh, awesome. Can I ask who you interviewed? I'm curious.
Yes. Let me open my email real quick here. I'm going to list off a couple names.
Yeah,
here.
Yeah, excellent.
Next here. Let's see. Sorry.
No, I didn't. You didn't know this was coming, so you couldn't.
No, I didn't.
Well, it's kind of nice then that it's tying into something you're already putting out there with.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Folks. Okay, Andrew M. Davis.
Okay.
Sherry Kling and Thomas J. Ord. Oord.
Okay, yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with.
They're like open theist in a sense.
Yeah,
they have a different kind of theology where God doesn't know everything.
Yep.
And they're obviously far more progressive in their approach to things. So like modernizing the concepts of theology and God and redefining. I mean,
yeah. And so I like a lot of process, not all of it, because I've noticed that some process theologians still put intention on God at times, or they still anthropomorphize God in terms of either God's intention toward us or in terms of what I think of as transactional, that we need something from God. So we say nice things to God and God gives it to us, or we hope that God will. And we don't necessarily always know if God will and does or where it comes from, but we ascribe it to God when it's good. And we apologize to God when something bad comes down the pipe, right? Like that's very transactional. It's not even actually relational, right? It's very conditional, and that's ultimately not helpful in relationships, much less if you believe that the God of the universe is doing that. So I do think that some of the process theologians are really interesting, and Joe Cobb does some really good like basic intro work on that for people who are interested. I love to say Monica Coleman's name because I think she's just this amazing woman, and she's a process theologian, but also brings in African religious traditions as part of what she does. What I actually find the most compelling, however, it's not process theology. It's taking it a step farther, I think. And that is I don't know if you saw the 2 books I shared let me share that. The sower and the parable of the sower and
so I've got parable of the sower here.
Yes, the parable of the sower, and then the parable of the talents. So those are 2. She died before she could write the 3rd. There was supposed to be a 3rd in this series.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, Octavia Butler, pretty amazing. It is so this was the second of the 2. Just to cut to the chase on this, she talks about God. She defines God as change. Period.
Oh, well, then God is, right. I mean,
no, but exactly. I'm gonna interrupt you though. Right, please. You the naturalist, right? Let's talk about it. God is change. I'm just blown away when I go outside and I watch the fact that there was nothing there 3 weeks ago, and now there's this huge plant or like this gorgeous flower that came out of a rhizome. How the bleep does that happen every year, right? What is that all about, right? But that is the process that happens in that rhizome that comes out every year. And that's the thing that's just set in motion. There's not somebody watching that and making that happen every year. It's already in the thing, right?
Right.
And that changes. That is a process that's set in motion already. And this thing over here is going to degenerate or deteriorate because that's a process that happens when you have something wood that isn't treated and it sits outside. It gets taken apart and deteriorates and falls apart. That's change. That's all. Things change. The one constant in this world is change.
Right.
And so you can, as she talks about it in this book, in a strikingly, like, it is stunning how appropriate it is to read those two books right now, because it's kind of a post-apocalyptic, kind of a dystopian setting. But the character she's writing her own scriptures, right? She's writing her own, and my novels are at the office, where I pull them open and read a little passage to you just to give you an idea. But she's talking about change is going to happen. Are you going to get on board and direct it to good? Or are you just going to sit back and watch things devolve? Or, right, the thing that from this perspective, the thing is things keep moving. That is a guarantee. That's the one guarantee we have. Mm-hmm. And so what if that is God? It doesn't have intention. It doesn't care about you specifically, because that's a really egotistical way of thinking about things. It is just that the processes are in motion. Things are happening. Life is happening.
It sounds like you're describing the natural world. That's
exactly.
So yes. It's like, here's this bridge, right? We're trying to bridge. Okay. Yeah. This is why I call nature Mother Nature.
I know. Some people do that.
Well, I do. No, the reason why is like, I've always had a he, father, God, that kind of thing. And it's like, no, we got Mother Nature. Now, I don't think nature is a woman. I don't think nature is a sex. Mm-hmm. But I use it because it's like, you know what? I'm reversing my own psychological thing. Hey, I've always had a he divine. Like, the he, like always God, Father, this, Father, that. And I'm like, you know what, Mother Nature, don't fight against Mother Nature. She'll kick your ass. I say these things and I mean it. But the truth is like, I find wonder, beauty, all of these wonderful things in the change of nature, because nature's going to take its course.
Exactly.
You just need to jump on board and get in tune with what is going to happen.
Right.
And if that is what we're defining as God, because we have to keep the category or the
right.
You know what I'm saying?
If that's a thing, then
right. Then I'm on board. I'm
not a bad option, right?
In fact, when I visit AA, because they have a God of your own understanding, a higher power, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So when I went to AA and NA, I know, but I'm just making a point. Like, I'll make a visit, because if it weren't for those rooms, initially, I don't know if I would have gotten the help I needed at the time. It was useful for me.
Yes.
And I go in for my annual thing to get a chip, just to show like it can be done. And I'm very appreciative of where I come from in this group. And when they go, like, they talk about God, they're mostly talking about Jesus. This is their thing. When I come in, I go, you know what? When I first got in here, my God was a group of drunks, G-O-D, group of drunks. And all of you in here were my God. And I needed you. And I worshiped you. And when you said, this is what I went through, your story, I became you. I connected. So, like, I think it's the category that we feel like we need, because we've had this category for so long in our traditions. And if we have the category, I'm all for redefining it. I just want to make that little caveat of saying, like, if we need the category.
I agree with you. I do.
You know what I mean? But I'm okay with redefining God. I think it's good that Christians are becoming more progressive and trying to be more philosophical. But I love also pointing out where this God comes from and how this God evolves. And like, really, it's not that God always was what you imagine God to be today. Like, ancient Near Eastern deity here. You know what I mean? Like, so
yes.
So it's an educational thing. So anyway,
absolutely.
Let me know when you want to get super chats. But
let's do that
when you're ready. If you had anything else you wanted to add, I don't want to interrupt you because you wanted to give the presentation.
I think we've hit the main things that I'm compelled by every time this comes up. And it comes up once a term because I teach Intro to Hebrew Bible every term. And I'm at that point in the semester where students are they're like justifying, I'm like, yes, that's good. That's good. Keep going. Yeah.
What if God was experience? Just
right.
What we are experiencing is what we're calling God.
Right.
It'll fit why we experience bad in a theodicy. It will fit why there's good, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You kind of wonder, what if experience is, if you wanted to take the category of God and
Yeah.
define it as something, change would fit in that. I mean, obviously, your
Exactly.
experiences change. They go up and down, up and down, up and down.
Exactly. And your experiences change you and the things around you, right?
Right.
I'm all for that. I think when it boils down, the piece that is most troubling to me is the intention people ascribe to God, right? And this transactional nature. And then again, since my focus is on the Newer Testament, then I have very particular interest in the way like Paul talks about salvation and all making those things. So that the human God relationship then is going to be dramatically different through this lens as compared to Paul's lens, which is drawing on Hebrew Bible ideas of God, which is this dude sitting up there. And I actually had a neighbor at one point when I started challenging her, or I didn't challenge her. I was telling her about what I was studying at PhD work, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, God isn't actually a he. She goes, what? You mean God doesn't have a penis? I'm not kidding. I wasn't searching for that one. She just came out and said it. I'm like, no, actually, God does not have a penis. But interesting that you have thought your first 23 years of life that it did. Right?
Didn't the rabbis say God was circumcised? I mean, come on. Like,
that's awesome.
That's awesome. A thing they think. So, yeah.
Some, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe not like later on, I think. But there was definitely this idea that, like, God keeps Sabbath.
Well, of course.
Kosher.
God started Sabbath, so of course God keeps Sabbath.
Right. I mean, but also like
kosher, eats kosher. That's
he's
awesome.
Circumcised, and there's some rabbis who think that that's the case. Like, obviously, they debated this, right? So some rabbis are like, get out of here. God's not a man, But yeah.
But it makes perfect sense to me in the same way that people the traditions I'm from in terms of Christianity are saying this, would say the same things about God, right? God aligns with our tradition, whatever.
Christians will just say, duh, Jesus was circumcised. God was circumcised.
Right?
Right?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Let's get the super chats.
Yeah, let's get this going.
I just want to say thank you for coming on and having this conversation. And Ricky Gervais, like, even if he is this like obnoxious guy from time to time, he's super fun to listen to. He's a sharp guy. He was in that show. My wife actually was like, Ryan, she's like, you got to watch the show he's in. And I started watching it. I was like, he's clever. And he also has serious moments too. So it's like, he's a good actor.
Yeah, I think so too. And I every now and then will point students to The Invention of Lying. He's in. Did you see that one, or do you remember that one?
I did not watch the whole thing.
But the moment is when his mother's dying and she's freaking out about dying and what's going to happen when I die. And he talks about going to a better place, and it's just this like, especially the point in time in which I was like, duh, like that's it, right? We created this. I mean, it's just, and it's so beautifully done, right? It's like, it's kind of the compassionate response that you gave to your friend's sister, right?
Yeah.
A lie that was comforting. Anyway.
We all tell them too. So, all right. So we're going to start from the beginning. Have mercy, my friends. Have mercy. Right? All right. Awesome. Sid Dave in the house. Thank you, Sid, for the super chat. Gods of religions do not exist, and very simple to debunk. A pantheistic kind of God may exist, but is not personal, so we should not bother wasting time. I don't know if it's the wasting time thing. I want to try and read this optimistically as much as possible, but the reason I want to respond just briefly and saying I want to waste time is because so many people actually believe in things. Right. So when people were like, you're wasting your time with this, if there weren't so many people who believe these things and that say that these gods or whatnot or what influence their lives and whatnot, I wouldn't have something to talk about every time I turn around on MythVision. Right? No, I'm talking. I'd have to find another hobby, but because it is such an. I mean, look what's going on in legal situations in America. Roe versus Wade. I mean, there's all sorts of issues. So, and I think that their concepts of gods do. What kind of comment would you like to make about the super chat?
Yeah, I try to take a similar approach, right? So the comment, gods of religions do not exist. I'm assuming Sid Dave is talking about the fact that, thinking of like the pantheons of ancient Greece or something like that. Like those beings don't exist. You better believe the people at the time did believe those gods exist. You don't build those kinds of temples to a figment of your imagination. And when I stood there and in the wreckage of ancient temples to Zeus and Athena and Artemis, I thought about it differently, because that this is real. This was real for them. And so, I think that was helpful for me. But also, when we talk about a personal God, again, I think that is back to what you and I were talking about at the beginning, this desire for that versus what is perhaps a more mature, a more grown up perspective on the world and the way things work. And that is that there isn't a cosmic parent watching over you all the time. That's actually kind of creepy when you stop. If you start,
I used to think that.
Oh, I did too.
It was so bad. I mean, I don't think people get it. Some people that are like, "Are you kidding me?" And it permeated my thoughts and everything. I was obsessing over it. It's like, don't eat that cookie. The cookie.
Everything.
The cookie.
My thoughts. Judgmental thoughts or whatever. Start making out with someone and you're like, wait, God's watching this. Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
Is this right? Is this wrong?
Exactly. What? Oh, so, a pantheistic kind of a God may exist, but is not personal. So I'm not really interested in a pantheistic God either. I'm interested in redefining the concept of God. And so, with respect, this comment or question is still putting forth this concept of God that I'm trying to suggest we should do away with.
Right. And I think, and it might be the let's just stop and I don't know. I think that we're trying to get in the sandbox and play with the concept to try and give people something that they can leave. Because when I left Christianity, it wasn't Christianity. Atheist. No, there's a path.
That's why it's so scary. Yeah.
And if I had people like you are describing comfortably nudging me into a category that still allows me to be a theist in my mind, still allows me to have something psychological, right? I found that. But I hope people will find that. And eventually they make their own conclusions as they research.
Yes.
I don't want anyone to be me. I don't want anyone to go, oh, Derek's an atheist. I need to be an atheist. Right. I do not care if you want to, at the end of the day, believe in something. Right. That's not my business. It's never been my goal. My goal is just to educate you and really get us all nudged in a progressive way together. Like, let's all realize that slavery is bullshit. Let's move out of these cutting people's arms off because they stole or outdated ideas. That's still been my primary thing. Yeah. So anyway, moving on to David the Goliath. Atheism just means not believing in God. You can still believe in religion. A lot of atheists claim to be Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, or Hindu atheists. That's true. That is true. But I mean, I don't have any qualms with this. I just think that the term atheism, like you were trying to describe, is a cuss word for many people who are theists.
Exactly.
Because it's a negative. Oh, I don't believe.
Exactly.
But haven't you seen how amazing life? There's this optimistic view that they think you're a pessimist because you're
right. Oh, and that was the thing I didn't talk about, which I somehow missed on my little list, which is the issue of morality. The way people assert that you can only be moral if you believe in God, which is, I remember thinking that, I remember believing that. And that's because I came from this tradition that told me that had these, the 10 Commandments and told me that, way to love God and Jesus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was so intertwined for me that, of course, if you didn't believe in this God, then that would mean that you're atheist, that you're a horrible person. It's funny to me now because I have a hard time reconnecting with that way of viewing things, but I do remember thinking it that way, but it isn't like the God of the Hebrew Bible was the first God to talk about these ways of getting along well in community. Those ideas came from people before them, but I really did believe, right, that morality is only found in religious traditions and specifically the right ones,
This is a thing I didn't tell you before we did the show. When you sent me this book right here, Battling the Gods, Atheism in the Ancient World, I interviewed Tim Whitmarsh in the past.
I was actually wondering if you might have. Yeah.
I have. And what I found fascinating is the term atheism right? How it was used by the Romans as Christians were immoral, and they didn't even have images of their God. So here you have these people who don't even have a God because there's no visuals, right? You can't see their God, so you don't have one. You're an atheist. And they were immoral because they weren't practicing the what is it, the rights to go and honoring the Caesar,
honoring the gods. Yes, honoring the emperor.
They
Absolutely.
were immoral. So here is this old baggaged term we call atheism. Here is this old baggaged term we call God, right? We're trying to redefine things, and here we are with the category again.
Exactly.
Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, David the Goliath. Scott Duke, what do you think or do with Tillich's ground of being as the definition of God?
Well, it might not surprise you, Scott. I tend to not. I'm trying to be snarky, and I don't want to be misleading.
I think our audience knows.
Tillich is a white man. I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
Tillich was a white dude. Tillich was also is really highly respected as being progressive for his time, and I think that's an important thing.
Okay.
And I think that I have studied the ground of being concept in its in context, and I think I generally resonate with this concept. I also am pretty sure that Tillich is still Christian and is still going to bring in the intentionality element at times. I could be wrong about that because it's been a while. But my point is, Tillich is still a Christian theologian, even if he's got this concept of ground of being that people can refer to. Does that make sense? Like it's when you start looking into it, it's still anthropomorphized at times. Like there's still this element. It's not a pure Platonic, as in ancient Plato, concept of the good or the source of life that they projected into the Logos or whatever, right?
For him, it's Jesus, pretty much, or at least his father.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's lovely. And that's really powerful and helpful for a lot of people. And that gives a lot of people a different space to be in. And I respect that, right? Kind of like you were saying earlier, Derek, that I'm not interested in, I'm interested in people getting to having a more mature engagement with these concepts. And I think that ground of being can be quite useful in that process.
It's a process. It's a process. So interesting that you said it that way. Thank you. Ronnie S., why do people still believe in the Abrahamic God when not even a single event attributed to this God has ever happened? Noah's Ark, sun standing still,
that's a great
Joshua,
one.
Moses, and Exodus, these are all myths.
They are. And I think, honestly, Ronnie, I think it's oh gosh, I just jumped right in. Is that okay?
I am. This is you. And
it's both of us. But yeah. But I mean, honestly, Ronnie, I'm like, yeah, I know. But that's also like, but people do, right? So here's the thing. When I like to flip some of these questions on their head and say, I hear you, Ronnie, and yet they do. So my efforts have been geared towards how can I help them see those for what they are and maybe find a new place, find a new way to engage the biblical texts without losing their faith, but also without having to uphold everything they see depicted in that Bible. And that is what most of my work is about. And my book, Permission Granted in particular, is my attempt to help you walk through all of those pieces. I'm not trying to say, Ronnie, that you need to walk through it because you've already done that. But there are a lot of people who genuinely have never been invited to stop and think about the fact that there's an animal, it happens to be a snake. There's an animal talking in Genesis 3.
Right.
No, but really just sit with that for a minute.
I really believe
animal,
that. I think you did too, but
Yes,
I know I did. I don't know how much fundamentalist you were, but
I was pretty fundamentalist for a while. Yeah, like I wasn't it wasn't until I was 28 that I stopped to think about the fact that I believed that. Believe that scene took place. And I really believe that, I don't want to just get off topic here, but it was embarrassing to me that I believed that someone conceived without having sex. Like, I really believed that, that's another conversation. I get it. But my point is, to answer the question, why do people still believe it? Because it's been a part of forming their mental framework. It's been there since the beginning for many of them, or it came into their life at a time when they needed something like that and it was really helpful and it worked for them, right? And it isn't about the fact that this isn't historically accurate, partly because some people are never shown that that is the case. Many people never get to the point where they consider the the evidence that this isn't historically accurate. That's why people still believe it. They believe it because it's defined things for them. It's what they know. It's back to your comment, Derek, about one fish saying to another that, did you know we're wet? Like, I don't even know what that means. How could I not be? What does it mean to even think about myself as not, And when people are given a space in which to look at this story and say, oh, walking around a city 6 times and then blowing horns isn't going to make the walls fall down? Like, really? Oh, wait a minute. Why did I believe? Oh, I believe that because someone had me act that out as a kid every year. That's why I believe, or whatever, right? People need a chance to be able, in a safe way, to be able to look at it without it being the straw that, that unravels everything, because that's what it feels like, right? Well, it will eventually unravel everything, but you got to do that one step at a time.
Yeah, and you're the one step at a time person. I am too, in many respects. Whereas you have your really strong, like aggressive people, like maybe Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, that kind of want to go, it's a delusion, and you're completely. That might work for some. I've actually had people tell me that works for them. However,
that's a small percentage.
It is. And this is just my opinion, right? While I love some of the things they say and really enjoy some of their stuff, I think to myself, like, how do I put this? Some of the people who follow people who have voices like this, are kind of trollish.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll give you an example. I know followers, and I'm not going to name scholars, but I've interviewed followers of certain of scholars that I've interviewed, and it's like they create double the devil.
Exactly.
in their following, and I want that conversation to be open, and friendly, and not just like, you idiot. So I think that Ronnie's question can be stemmed also into how the Abrahamic faith's God really became the state religion, became the popular thing. Then they're trying to take over the world. A part of their apocalyptic mission is to convert the world. So everyone you encounter has to hear this message. They're all getting indoctrinated. Now everybody's hearing it. And now we're just now kind of post-enlightenment starting to, even with the freedom of religion, starting to get people to realize, whoa, why aren't we looking at this stuff like the Greeks look at, or like people look at the Greek mythology do today? And I think it's going to get to that point where we're going to look back and see it for what it is mythology. But I think we already are. But I mean, like most people,
not everyone. The majority, there's the majority is still in that mythic.
I hope I didn't interrupt anything. So.
No, I actually wanted to also just reiterate that what you said about, in particular, those two guys, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, that I or Christopher Hitchens, I guess you said. I appreciate the thoughts that they have, but I, as an educator, am really put off by any sort of dismissiveness. And what's interesting to me is part of it is they either came out of that, or they know people. Like, it's an interesting thing. There's an edge even to, and I have a great deal of respect for Bart Ehrman, but there's an edge, a snarky edge in his textbook, which I use every term. And that snarky edge is really off-putting, right? And
you know who else told me this, by the way? I just want you to feel like you're in good company. Elaine Pagels.
Yeah. Oh, I just adore her.
She said that same thing.
Yes. It's a very. I'm actually. Thank you for saying that. I am honored actually to be in her. But yeah. And the thing is, it is a part of his past. So he was kind of working some shit out there, right? But I don't find it helpful to be dismissive and rude to our former selves, much less to other humans.
That's what I'm trying to do. I get it, and I try not to be that way. But I try to remind myself, if you've ever dealt with an addict that is in active addiction, they're very hard to deal with. They're dishonest. They're a pain in the what.
Oh my God, secrecy, all kinds.
I was that way, right? So I try to remember, like, I wasn't a bad person. I was sick. Okay, I try to look at the addicts the same way. I try to empathize and remember what it was like drinking the Kool-Aid. And
Mhm.
like, and I know that they don't, most of them don't even realize. They don't even realize. Why would I be mean to someone who can't cognitive dissonance, whatever it might be? Like, am I going to be hateful to someone who can't get it? It's not that they're stupid. I wasn't stupid. You and me weren't stupid for
I
thinking
wasn't
this book was
stupid.
talking.
Yeah.
Right. But we were kind of stuck in like this bubble, and someone's got to nudge us to take a step. Some people are able to jump to the
that's right.
stuff.
Some people can do that, but most people need some gentle hand holding and right.
Yeah, I was like, can you cuddle with me, please?
Totally, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? Like, that's a little too much. Whoa, that's scary. What?
Yeah.
Can you cuddle with me?
I know, I'm being funny.
Yeah, that's good.
Troy Miller says lighting candles and chanting for Dr. Bird.
Okay, I just love that. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I'm gonna take it. That's awesome.
Seriously, Troy, I hear you. I hope you're speaking in tongues as well, my friend. You know, I do that on my channel often, by the way.
Speak in tongues.
Dr. Harleen Quinzel, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for the super chat. God of Israel is just the made-up national god of a country. Italians conquered Israel, and this country's god became a global god through Christianity.
Well, I do agree with that first sentence. And Italians is the part that's throwing me. Part of me is very curious about Harleen Quinzel and where Harleen is from. And I'm assuming that's a female, but I don't know for sure. Using the label Italian as compared to Roman is throwing me a little bit. So that's me. But I'll just transpose Italian for Roman, which is the way I've thought of it. The Roman Empire is the way I've thought of it, but I'm not sure that anyway.
Either way, I get the point.
Yep. So, but conquering Israel, or I would say the region that we refer to as Israel. So Israel itself wasn't a country. I guess I'm sorry. I'm doing the.
You're being a scholar right now.
I get what you're saying. Seriously, and I appreciate the question, but I think I'm trying to show why my response is I'm not getting there quite the same way. But I want to highlight that using that language I think doesn't work well for me because it is actually a really challenging issue to talk about Israel as a country at all or state at all. And an entity. Part of the problem of the Hebrew Bible is that people believe it was this stable or something entity, and it's really wasn't that ever. But anyway, okay. And this country became a global god through Christianity. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And anywhere you see Christianity around the globe, that's because of the colonizing efforts that went on, in particular starting in the 16th century, which is the time, by the way, historically speaking, that the church at all started focusing on that line in Matthew 28. Go and make disciples of all nations. That wasn't the thing to take up. That wasn't a thing at all. But they focused on it when they started started colonizing the globe. It's very convenient.
Yeah, I think I get the point. At the end of the day, this is a fact. It went from a tribal deity that has evolved, I think, through philosophy, and of course, Christianity was really well at adopting and mutating with the environment. So. You could be literally when Manichaeism comes on the scene. No wonder in the Silk Road here you have a Buddhist form of Christianity, and it's like, what? Well, because Christianity could find its way to fit into the cultures around it, and I think that's why it's been so successful as well. Dr. Harleen, thank you for the super chat. Robert Herring in the house. He is a member. His name is in the Lamb's Book of MythVision.
That is so great.
Appreciate it, man. Seriously though, thank you.
Aww.
Sid Davis back. Anthropomorphic gods always lead to great art. When you see a Buddhist temple, Christian church, Hindu temples, the art is amazing. I feel that it is missing in Islam and Judaism due to ban on idolatry.
Oh, that's interesting.
There is some beautiful, there's some beautiful art from Islam that I've noticed, but they do it in a different way. They don't put images.
That was going to be my point.
Yeah.
It's a beauty that sometimes I find really beautiful. Sometimes it doesn't work for me, but that's a beauty that they're putting out there, right? Because I think getting around this.
Like when they sing the Quranic verses, you're like, seriously? You're like, kind of like, that sounds kind of cool. Because they don't use instruments while they're doing it.
Yeah. Or the call to prayer. yeah, the
Right.
call to prayer 5 times a day can be quite mesmerizing and beautiful.
I
That's a
literally
very
was thinking of the Lion King
yeah,
scene
that's what
where
it
he's
sounded like you were doing.
I
You
was
have children,
trying.
don't you? Because
I
that
do.
was a
I
good
do.
opening of the Lion King, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Your name is in the Lamb's Book of
I know.
MythVision as well. Yeah, but I
But
wouldn't down Islam. As far as Judaism, no. Look at the floors. Look at the mosaics on the floors of the synagogues. All of these
Or the
zodiac
walls.
symbols or the
Yeah,
walls.
yeah.
But I don't know about modern synagogues, so I haven't been in modern synagogues. But I know that in these periods, here you had zodiac sign symbols with the animals and art and stuff. Yeah, so I
And
wouldn't just rule those ones out.
yeah, and I would also say in the flip side, Buddhist temples can be quite beautiful and intricate, but there aren't gods involved with Buddhism. There's a veneration or an image often of a form of the Buddha in whatever their location, but that's a statue that is is his example. So he's standing in as an example. You take refuge in the Buddha. You're not actually worshiping the Buddha. The Buddha's example is there for you. So, but it is true that we do at least have some sort of human form in those locations, and I guess that's part of what they're getting
I think
at.
that's what Sid's trying to get at. Is
Yeah, I think
like
so. I think
there's
so.
a lot more. It's not limited art where you have this like particular. Well, we can't put that on there. Hey, Bob, don't. What are you doing? Don't draw that. Like
Right. You wouldn't have the Sistine Chapel if it weren't for an anthropomorphic
what's
god,
up with
right?
me and Bob's? I got to come up with Bob's. So anyway, seriously, Sid, thank you so much for that.
It's an interesting perspective. That. Yeah, I agree.
Showering me with super chats. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bradford Baldwin, personally, to be agnostic is to only state that I don't make a knowledge claim that there is or isn't a God. Therefore, I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't believe, but I don't claim there isn't a God.
Yeah, I hear you on all of that. And I can't help it. We're back to the same thing, right? That
I don't
there is
in
a God, and what is that God that you're saying you do or do not know? Like, I still think there's a premise there that can be that has been the premise that so many people over the millennia have focused on, right? That being that looks like us and acts like us, but maybe in a more perfect and loving way or something,
Yeah.
That's, and I get that. And I appreciate that Bradford wanted to speak up and say that, because I appreciate and respect people's positions with it all. But I still want to say, let's redefine that God that you're saying you're not sure does or doesn't exist, right?
Right. I mean, so it sounds like me over and over. We're trying to be more optimistic because if we say this, right, the theist is going to say, you Debbie Downer, you're not positive in this. See, you have to say what you don't believe again, this and that. But then if you phrase the question and ask the particular Christian theist, let's say, do you believe in this God or that God? No. Are you a Debbie Downer because you don't believe in this God or that God? And you have to try and get them to think about the perspective here. Like, why don't you believe in that God then? Well, look who's the negative one. Why can't you? Well, it's part of our doctrine. My point is it the fact that we keep saying what we don't believe that's making this a hard conversation between them? Or is it better that we say, well, you believe in Jesus. I believe in, nature and humanity and change and what's inevitable. And they go, well, I believe in change too. Well, okay, we believe in something similar. Why can't we call that God? And I think it's the fundamentalist that can't redefine these things. So how do we pop the bubble for them? Or how do we help them get from fundamentalist out? That's the tough one. So.
Well, and that is, I will just follow that up with, and that is why I have taken a lot of time and energy to help people think critically when they read the Bible. That is, is that first step that you're talking about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bradford, thank you, Bradford. Yeah.
Doc Pluromana is back
in the house.
I'm gonna have a hard time reading these questions.
Do you want me to read it?
Oh, I'm just teasing. I'll try.
Okay. I'm sorry, it was like a reaction. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that to be condescending.
I may not get these right. I'm not kidding, but I just, wouldn't a non-cognitivist, how do you pronounce that, be more appropriate, thus rejecting the myriad of cognitive uselessness of God's existence or God exists concepts. The ambiguity of God terms does not express a proposition. Anything can be defined into existence. I'm about to reread this. Wouldn't a non-cognitivist be more appropriate, thus rejecting the myriad of cognitive uselessness of God exist concepts? I don't even quite comprehend the question here, but that's how tough you are, Doc. You're always testing me, man. This redneck from the South.
It's been a long day. Come on. No. But I think this is getting at part of like what's at the seed of all this for me, right? The God exists claims, I think, is or I'm gonna disprove your God, or I'm gonna prove that your God doesn't exist, right? That line of thinking is what has predominated, at least Christian theology, right, for 1900 years. And so part of me is like, yeah, that would be more appropriate if we could get away from this element of the existence of this thing. And my particular suggestion of how we start to move beyond that, at least, is what we've been discussing here. So, yeah, the ambiguity of God terms does not express a proposition. I mean, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think what I do agree with, which I think is also going on here, is we've had a lot of intellectual claims being made and people trying to make sense of things. And so I'm not sure what you mean by the ambiguity of God terms, just to be honest.
Doc, I'm going to get to your next one. Follow up if you can help us with that particular one with something. And Doc is back again.
Oh, goodness.
How does geography and climate affect genesis of ideas, symbols, and practice, where theology is elaborated in various traditions? How do gods serve specific purposes relevant to local conditions? This is that point of the ancient Near Eastern, like,
exactly,
right when we were getting into that. So.
I mean, it's almost like you literally turn your questions into statements.
Right.
That is actually my response, right? They do.
Yeah.
They define what people need or how they understand God in their location, and to a large degree. Obviously, there are traditions being passed around through trade and people moving around and all that stuff too. But I just think that's such a great way to kind of get at, yes, ancient ideas and making sense of the world in
not
specific
only in the
locations.
Not even this like limited scope, Dr. Bird. It's also in the idea of God being universal. Because if you think about where this stems from, this is a worldwide empire. And the philosophy of this empire. So this God has to match the universal aspect of this empire, which Rome was unique, even compared to the city-states of Greece, where they would, no matter what genealogy you come from, they didn't care about your tribe, so to speak. Even if there were aspects where someone was like, well, I'm from this tribe or this particular family group in Rome, overall, anyone could become a citizen, which was very unique and different. The Athenians were not okay with this and stuff like that. So you wonder, like, this development of Rome and its impact on Jews and Judaism and Christianity and stuff like that. Like, why did this God get bigger? Well, because the empire got bigger. And so this God comes to fit the picture of its environment. And this also fits why he was an ancient Near Eastern desert deity. And later becomes the God of all existence and everything under, not just picking a specific tribe among, all the nations of the earth. Just all sorts of interesting things. I'm looking for Doc's like clarification because I really have a hard time with that first one. Doc, forgive me, man. I really am behind on understanding it. Lambert, it's all meaningless. Hold on. You're here, man. Please clarify. Did I miss it? I'm trying to reference that previous super chat because I don't want to. I'm not trying to leave my boy hanging here. I think someone says, I think Doc is conveying how unintelligible God language is. So like, or at least it's not, it gets back to that, like, do we need the category? And are we using the category, I think, to try to bridge the gap because people are already using it. Like it's like that idea, like it's a waste of time. We saw that super chat earlier, it's a waste of time. But when you have, let's say 3 to 4 billion people on planet Earth use the term or come up with they're using a category.
Right.
Why aren't we playing with it?
Yeah.
And so maybe it's useful in certain contexts to try and play with to bridge the gap or to have a bridge where we can communicate.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's what your point is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I part of me is like, oh, Michael, I wish we could have you clarify a little bit more about what you're saying here, because how unintelligible God language is, that to me sounds more like many of the categories that did develop in the early church. And again, I'm coming out of a Christian tradition. That's the stuff I've studied. So those are the ideas and framework I have. But there's a lot of, it's too woo-woo, just woo-woo word salad. But that is, like, oh gosh, I'm trying really hard not to say this, but dude, it's a bunch of dudes trying to define things, and they just needed better things to spend their time on. I don't know, like if they brought some women to their conversations to talk about God, it might have sounded a little different. And instead of very philosophical and clear, like defining, and we've got categories, and we're going to, this is who God is, and this is how God behaves, and like, oh my God, it is exhausting, and it is woo-woo word salad.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think that's what Doc was getting at. I had to scroll back up because I didn't see a response. Maybe we answered it? I don't know. But Doc, thanks for that final one there about geography and climate.
Yes.
Alan Bird is in the house. Great to see you here. He is also a Patreon member. Nice. We have a sense of self that acts. So when other things appear to act, then they too must have self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're projecting that concept, right, into a kind of a form of a cosmic being, I think that's where you're going with this, that there's a self, there's a being, a God that we're trying to talk about existing or not. And, especially before people understood why that volcano erupted. Was it because a God caused it to erupt because we've pissed him off? Right. Or is it just because the tectonic plates have been shifting? It's time for that thing to blow,
Right. And I get why we assume agency in it, in the ancient world. Now that we know a little bit more, we can explain these things. Thank you so much for that super chat. Let me get the next one here. Johnny Spinoza, happy 34, a round old soul, the sun. Yeah, so tomorrow I will be 34 years old.
Whoop, whoop.
I think I'll go to the movies with the wife and kids, and we will just have a good old day, I'm hoping. And
nice.
She's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I know for sure I want to eat out.
Awesome.
And then I told her, I was like, you know how you can go and tell the waitress it's their birthday, or the waiter, tell the kids to trick me. I'll know it's, but I'll pretend like I'm being surprised, like,
oh, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah. So
kids.
I won't be doing MythVision tomorrow. So I'll be focusing on family. Thank you for the super chat, Johnny. And now I'm calling you Johnny. I hope I'm actually properly saying that.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Johnny to me. Melody Joy in the house with the sticker. And she's a member of MythVision. She has pure salvation. Like there's
the fact that you do that, that's awesome.
I mean, if you want to be saved, like look, you have two choices.
Assured of your salvation.
Do you really want to risk it? I mean, do you want to risk it? If you want to not risk it, join MythVision's membership, and you will not go to hell for all eternity. Okay, but if you want to play games,
Right? It's your salvation. It's your life.
Craig and Fur, go subscribe to my buddy the barber. This was about that reference earlier about like why aren't we sharing? The priests aren't sharing with like the common folk. And he's like, Derek's got a barbecue later. Benji, thank you for the super chat. What is your opinion on Aztec gods? I can't even pronounce one of them. I can't. Don't even. You did this on purpose. I know what you're doing, Benji. I know what you're doing. You want to see me speak in tongue? Hama is a huta salaka pakapitati, a quetzagalacopi, tascalacapoca, and exipetotek. I don't even know if I'm like. Anyway, I don't know anything about Aztec gods other than, from what I understand, they like to be sacrificed to.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Yeah,
a lot of gods do
apparently. Where they're on the top of the pyramids cutting the hearts out. There's images of them cutting the hearts out. So. Plus,
indeed.
didn't like a whole, I think a whole spew of them died because they were drinking from the same water they were throwing the corpses in, something like that. So there was something like that. But I don't know about the gods that much.
I don't either, to be honest. And it's partly because I've needed to focus my efforts and attention in one particular, and I branch out from that enough as it is. I mean, no disrespect. It's just that's not been the thing that I spend time learning about and studying.
I would like to actually get an academic, like a scholar who specializes in the field, that can give us a rundown of what the gods are. Are they anthropomorphic, natural entities, kind of like the sun is anthropomorphized as Ra, the god?
They're quite similar in that way.
I'd be interested in that. Yeah. Thank you, Benji, for the super chat. Caleb Jackson, my buddy. What is going on, Caleb? Thank you for showing up. Remember, if you want true salvation, join the membership of MythVision. He's a Christian friend of mine. And so does the idea of God being all-powerful, or being, I think he meant all-powerful, come from the notion of God being the prime mover? He was limited. Wouldn't it require another explanation?
So the idea of saying that God is all-powerful does start to show up in the late Hebrew Bible writings. So it isn't the prime mover. I actually don't know. I don't remember at what point, historically speaking, the prime mover is first described or defined in philosophical and theological writings. I have this sense that it's much later, much later. Did Plato talk about it that way? I don't think so, right? I think that's just a Christian philosophical philosophy and theologian kind of conversation from like the 1000 or later.
I think that there might be something there, like in Plato's thinking. Yeah, they definitely are coming up with like the Platonic perfect version of good, and there's like this God beyond comprehension, philosophically speaking.
Yes.
And this ties into natural theology, I think, as well, when we're looking at it, from what I understand. But I don't think this stems from the Hebraic, ancient Near East. Of course, this is something that is developed over time.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear, though, that the language of prime mover, I think, post-dates biblical ideas, and we do see the start of this concept of God being all-powerful showing up in the Hebrew Bible. Right. It isn't, the universal, like it's still, they're working towards it. They're starting to get there in the late prophets and in some of the writings. Right. But it's not so I would say that no, the idea of God
prime mover.
Yeah, right. The idea of God being all-powerful doesn't come from the prime mover ideas. If he was limited, wouldn't it require another explanation? So I feel like maybe that second question doesn't apply.
If he was limited, wouldn't it require another explanation?
Because because the concepts of the prime mover, right? That nothing can move. That God is the one that puts all things in motion.
Right. So I think related to that, yeah. I mean, if it wasn't all God, you would need another explanation, I suspect. I don't really know if I'm
not sure that I'm tracking either entirely. I don't want to be disrespectful.
Caleb?
Yeah.
What's the deal, man? Help me out. Help me out. I'm scrolling down. Let's see if Caleb can help me. Caleb, you still in the chat, man?
And I also do want to just circle back that part of the issue where the idea of this particular, we've chosen in this religion to have one God instead of many, like that kind of develops first. And then this issue or this need for this one to be all powerful does start as in contrast to all these other gods around them, right? And wanting to claim some identity or some political validity, or to have establishment of themselves as a state or whatever. So it does come up initially as politics and power issues and all that, in contrast to others. But yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Your description was pretty accurate there. Okay. So I think it's like, it's almost a sovereignty question too, like the Calvinists have, like if God did do it all, then there has to be other explanations that fit it. And Calvinists can't imagine that, but maybe I'm putting it in the wrong category. I don't know. If God was limited, you would need another explanation for why he's unable to do something, which would mean that he can't be the prime mover of all things.
Here's the thing, though. There's the framework that this language is coming out of is part of what I'm trying to suggest we reconsider. It sounds to me like you're still wanting to put power and intention and some form of cosmic control into the hands of a anthropomorphic kind of a spiritualized being. And to me, it comes out of a place that makes sense, right? The desire for certainty about things, right? I mean, it's the same. It comes out of, it seems to me, a similar place that the initial ideas about evil being an embodiment and a separate being from God. Those are similar ideas. I think they're coming from similar places of wrestling with the world and wanting the one that's in control, wanting to be on the side of the one who's in control. Right?
Yeah.
But, even just the premise of saying, if God is limited, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right? Like, and I know that sounds like I don't know how
it goes back to that point I told you on the phone earlier today where I said, my dad is invincible. And when I found out he was just another human who actually is getting older and he can't do what he once did, it scared me I'm now almost an adult and I'm freaking out thinking, Dad isn't invincible? Like he can be beaten? Like I liked the idea that he was all powerful. Right. Now I get that this is a different category to get into philosophy, but like my point is who's to say God has to be, unlimited in power and all this?
Exactly.
Like, especially if you're dealing with text that seem to imply he's not. He doesn't even know where people are at times.
Exactly.
He's angry and he's jealous. And
Moses talks him off his ledge of destroying the people, right?
Right. So this idea, I think, of the unmoved mover or the prime mover or this is philosophy later in the day. This is trying to explain things that the God of the Bible doesn't have. Mm-hmm. Isn't there? Now, I'm not saying they didn't say things like he's all powerful, but here's the question. When they say all powerful, what do they mean? Like everything in existence is stemmed in it? Or is this like saying, you know what, man, he's the best of everything I've ever seen, or he's better than all of us, or all does that all universally mean every single thing? It's kind of like that passage I used to interpret as a Calvinist in John 6, when Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. Universalists grab a hold of that and say, all, see, everyone, right? And man just means human. Then there's the Calvinists who go, well, all who are in Christ.
Exactly.
But then there's the interpretation I'm now at where I'm like, hold on. All it's saying is this was a Jewish thing, and now this is going out to all people, meaning like anyone who is accepting the message, and it's not limited to Jews.
Right.
That's beyond the whole Arminianism Calvinism thing now.
Totally.
It's so outside of that.
It's just different.
You kind of wonder if like these words become the unmoved mover philosophy that are being attributed to the God.
Exactly.
Anyway,
yeah.
Caleb.
No. I love exactly. And just because I want to chime in a little bit, Caleb. I'm going to push you really even on you're using a male pronoun or you're using a personal pronoun. And I get that, but
I do.
Have you? No, I know. But what happens when you stopped? There was an earlier question that talked about God language. I'm like, oh, that for me is a different conversation. God language is, what categories, what labels are we bringing? And let's talk about the pronouns, because for us as people who are relational and all of that, right? A personal pronoun is important to us. And we have images in our head that we associate with personal pronouns. And in particular, because the Christian tradition has done this for 1900 years, they've called that God male, and that God is male. And that in and of itself is a fun way to start to think differently about the world and the existence, and whatever this God is. because what happens if you swap out the he for a she? Does that shake your foundation to say she is the prime mover of all things? It probably does. And I'd encourage you to look into that. And I mean that respectfully and seriously. Like,
yeah, Caleb's like, he's really open-minded to conversating, even if he has his mind made up. Like, he's like, you know what I mean? We all have kind of our made-up minds in some ways. But Caleb, thank you, brother. Love you, man. Thank you for the super chat, and let's keep it up on the journey. We're all learning. All right. Jake K, thank you for being a member.
Aww.
Just reminding everybody with the super sticker that your name is written. Your name is written. Serious, Jake. Thank you. I have to remind people, because they want their names written too. Ronnie S is back. Do you think Islam, Christianity are more progressive as compared to Buddhism, Hinduism? Abrahamic religions were able to replace Indian religions in Central Asia, South Korea, parts of South Asia, Indonesia, but vice versa did not happen.
Well,
wouldn't it be
more aggressive? Do you think that they are more aggressive? Oh, absolutely. At first I thought you said progressive, and I was like, I'm not sure that I think they're more progressive. Oh goodness. I'll need to temper my response. Oh, hell yeah. My response to that question. Oh, hell yeah.
Right. I'm on board with this as well. That's not to say there isn't aggression in like Hindu nationalists and other things. There's definite crap going on over there as well. But as far as this, why? Like, look at how it expanded. Look at how, like you talked about colonialism. Like,
right. And the most of the expression of Buddhism and Hinduism specifically, but more so Buddhism, is about peace. So there's that.
Yeah.
Again, not that there aren't some who
Christianity is supposed to be about that too. Yeah. But it became a political machine. It's and then they came up with the just war theory to try and rationalize why we need to kill off everybody and stuff, or at least why we need to defend ourselves. And then it ends up becoming these damn Muslims out here trying to kill us, and now we got to fight them, and it's going back and forth. And
I also think that, see, here's the thing. I always want to make sure to throw in there that I agree what you just said, in particular, because it was taken up by the state. So that makes it just monster, right? But I also still see in the texts themselves, and now I've lost my train of thought again. Because of the issue of certainty, and this is the definition, this is the idea, this is the way, and this is back into other conversations we've had. But I just want to be clear that it's not just, I don't think that it's just because the Roman Empire took up Christianity as their national, religious tradition. It's in the texts and in the early working things out at the end of the 1st century, beginning of 2nd century, in my opinion. And because you have the fighting between the sects of Judaism for the correct trajectory, and all of those pieces of having ideas right, that to me is the fodder for the aggression and the violence that then comes and is
already calling everybody a heretic. Already,
well, yeah, exactly.
And so it's just one step to realize apostates deserve to be,
deserve. Yes. Yeah.
So they're already in a category of like otherness, and now you have the state in a way, and this religion. Conquering is part of the conquest. We got to rule the world, and then how are you going to do that if your head keeps getting cut off by going to these outside groups, these barbarians, as a Greek might use the term, other than to fight back? And I don't know. The modes kept changing the way this works. There's actually a wonderful book by Stephen J. Shoemaker, who's arguing that by the 7th century, apocalypticism is like on the scene again, for like intensely for Christians. And of course, Muslims in the Quran and Jews thought the end was going to happen soon. Like there's this apocalyptic fervor, but the conquest isn't like all kingdoms are going to be gone because God's going to come in. It's this notion that the ruling kingdom is the kingdom that God is going to come and favor. And so they're competing to be the reigning kingdom.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's like apocalypticism in its original context that we see in Judaism and Christianity is like screw the world. Our riches are in heaven. This world in existence is going to go away. Not in the 7th century, not later on in the centuries leading up to. They thought the ruling kingdom that would conquer is the one God would favor and come in and rule from a throne on, etc.
Very interesting.
So it's reversed its role.
Yeah,
He writes in his book.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why they would go out aggressively once they've changed the doctrine in their mind to do these things. It's just really interesting.
Very interesting.
It's like almost like Zionism, like Zionists that are trying to force all Jews to go back to Israel so that the end of the world would happen.
As if we really want that. Why do we want that anyway?
Ronnie S., thanks for that super chat. Great point. Great point. I used to think that was a good thing. And
yeah. I did too. I appreciate that you, pull me back from that, because it's true. I did. And because I hadn't stopped to think about it. That's the thing. Back to that other question, right? Why do people believe that? Because they've not been given a chance to stop and think about it.
Did you want to make a comment?
No, I was just going to say, because I can't help myself. That's why I did that. I created a little video of the depiction of God in both Testaments. But yeah,
I have. Is that the one you sent me?
Well,
just
I thought I did.
Everybody knows. Yes, you did. It is this right here.
Yep. The depiction of God in both Testaments. There's just it's a 7-8 minute.
Okay, let me comment that down in the chat so everybody can go right now and at least click it, save it, check it out.
Thank you.
Here it is. And this is not on your channel though. This is on the Portland.
It is on my channel. It's in one of the collection or whatever.
Okay, so it's a playlist.
One of the playlists. Yeah.
Got it.
That's the only way I could have it on my channel. But it's also on my.
Let me give them this too.
It's also
I actually pinned it.
Thank you. Yeah. It
is pinned. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna say I'm still trying to figure out how to change the order of some of these little videos so people can see other ones when they first come to the page. But it's also on my personal website. But it's been so exciting. I have followers now because you all been letting me have conversations with you, and it's really fun.
That's the things I live for, to see others happy and stuff helps me. So I'm glad that we're helping you and continuing to grow your channel. I did pin that, pinned her YouTube channel. It is the pinned comment. Please go subscribe to her YouTube channel. Nice. Just click on playlist if you're interested in checking out other works she's done that are out there, but it will show up in her playlist. And of course she's got all sorts of videos. I'm doing an early plug for what we're going to talk about at the end anyway, but yeah, please go subscribe to her. I will be checking this number. So if this number's not over 400, we got a problem. We got 20 at least to hit. We might already hit it, but please subscribe to Dr. Bird's YouTube channel. I'll be checking. If you want to at least, burn off some of those sins that I won't even make you go through in purgatory, you can knock off some of those sins right here by subscribing. I mean, I got to keep it real with them.
That's good.
When it's a fact, you got to point out the fact.
You do, and you got to be disciplinarian about it. Angry, violent disciplinarian about it.
It's absolutely the facts. Yeah. So I just want to be honest and tell them the truth about what's going to happen to them if they don't, Constellation Pegasus, thank you for the super chat. Interesting discussion. Wondering what a good word would be used to replace atheist.
It's a good question.
Was thinking determinist, but that is in competition with free will and not proven defined yet.
I guess I kind of go back. I go back to, I like the word humanist. Is there something wrong with that?
I like it.
Yeah.
Because it gives you something to believe in.
I do. And I the thing that I can believe in is humanity and our ability to fix things and come together. It's not that we're all perfect, and it's not that only, but I do believe in humanity's ability to come together and make a difference in the world.
It might also get rid of the whole debate within atheism and agnosticism, because there's a debate even there. They're like, hold on, atheism by its philosophical definition is this affirmative that there is no God type of position. Are you a philosophical atheist, or are you someone who's more of the lack-theist, which is the one who says, I don't think there's a God, but I don't know there's not a God, and this stupid argument that goes on back and forth. So
exactly,
yeah. Let's find out what we all can agree on, and then stick to that. I don't know. I still use the term though. Maybe it's because I'm caught up reading about it a lot, and I'm used to. I have no problem with it. But this is a good point, Constellation. What would be that term? Humanist, you think, is a better one?
It's the one that I have used a few times for myself.
Are you using that for the sneak peek? Okay. Well, yeah, I fit that category as well, and I am a humanist. But I guess when it's just talking about the God belief and belief in God. But,
and that's the thing is, when I think about this conversation through these labels, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all to this question or the person who posed it, it's just that, one of the things that compelled me into PhD work was that I was asked to read and agree with all of these categories and these assertions that people are making and defining around this concept of God. And there's this, it's just this really, it's a really interesting power play. And it's a really interesting, and it's kind of like, it's why I made that bizarre, what might've felt like an offhand or bizarre comment last time about, the pale male scholars who are all just having these conversations over here by themselves, but they're really caught up in having a conversation on particular ideas. And it doesn't even register for BIPOC people, for most women, because we're interested in fixing the problems in the world. I don't care about what you think about the law. And and those particular divisive, defining categories and boxes. Can we just do away with the fucking boxes, please?
Right.
And that's my reaction when I feel like there's this, what is this thing about definitions and boxes and stuff? I get the desire for definitions. I do. Trust me.
Yeah. I get it.
When we're talking about this realm, that is uncontainable and.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Thank you.
It is. I hope that wasn't dismissive, what I said.
No.
Constellation Pegasus. That's a fun name.
Thank you for the super chat again, my friend. I confidently believe one day humans can live forever with nanotechnology. It's only a matter of time that happens. When it does, with continual human evolution, what's going to happen with God then? Finally outgrow him?
Do we have to wait until then? But yeah.
I am thinking that if we get to that point, then
living forever,
I think we would be beyond that. I don't know. God would have well evolved in terms of our understanding of existence and the world and what is this? What is this? Why do we exist? What is this?
Yeah.
Have we figured that out by then?
Yeah.
Can we figure it out? Are we ants in an ant farm who can't get outside to see there's something out there that built the farm or didn't build the farm, or maybe there's this multiverse of just what is this? Maybe we figure that out one day. I don't know.
And I just want to say that if this does happen, I really don't want to be around, because I just don't think I want to live forever. I do on some days. And I know that when my day comes to die, I'm going to be really sad about dying or something. I might be struggling and fighting it, but I'm also I don't think I could do this forever.
That's exactly what I told Ryan. I told my wife Ryan, I said, honey, I can't wait one day to just rest in peace. And she's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I'm like, well, I'm not suicidal. That's not my point. My point is this has been a struggle.
Yeah.
I've had some trials. I have struggled in life. And one day it will just be like going to sleep and not having to feel anything. Yeah. Because it's tough. Sometimes life is tough. So, but this is an interesting question to think about.
It is. It
kind
is
of sci-fi-ish in
I
a
liked
way.
I liked your response to it. I think that was a good response.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of.
But if we can get to that point, if humans can actually get to the point where this is possible, I would like to think that the category is utterly redefined, if not just outmoded, outdated.
You know that movie Interstellar?
I haven't watched it. I know I need to.
You've committed a sin. I will have to forgive you for it. But
pay penance or something for that? Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But it's okay. It's totally normal.
Okay, thank you.
People sin all the time, and I'm a merciful. We'll talk about it. I'm just kidding. Hey, Edgar, thank you for the super chat. God is a way too easy, but more of consciousness projecting itself, and myths can be seen as profound attempt at understanding itself. In more of a Jungian way, thoughts, forgive me, I am a Pythagorean. You are forgiven. I have that power. We were just talking about that. I'm just kidding. God is way too easy. But
Yeah.
more of consciousness
But more of a
projecting.
conscious projecting itself, which is really what you're talking about here on this
Right.
channel, isn't
When
it?
I
I mean,
said
that really,
experience is God,
yeah.
that was my point. Like
Mhm.
maybe
Mhm.
maybe we should come to that point where it's just like your existence and experience is what we're defining as it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Profound attempt at understanding itself, understanding ourselves. Consciousness projecting itself. See, now what you just did there, if I'm paying attention, is that you just said that consciousness is a separate thing or entity
Right.
in and of itself and not within a human. So if I'm misreading that, God is way too easy, but more consciousness, like you're
That's why
personally.
he's saying, "Forgive me, I'm Pythagorean."
Yeah.
Like,
Well, um, I think the Pythagorean, that was the conversation before, but maybe not. No, I see. Here's the thing: what consciousness as a
depending on how
separate
you define it.
entity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of still we're. I mean, I suggested that God has actually changed. So, what is that? How do you?
Well, remember when I said earlier that the God of the Bible, it's written that we're made in his image, but really it's a projection of the people of the time, the culture,
Yeah.
the environment. We had those from Dr. Romanot and other people. Like it's a reflection of the human
Yeah.
portraying what they think was what was before them because it's
Yeah.
their experience. So their experience and their observations of the natural world becomes the thing they think pre-existed them and is what made them to be.
Exactly.
And I think that if this is what I think, that consciousness is projecting itself, therefore we are kind of this aftermath of consciousness thought. I disagree personally, but then again, I would define consciousness as something the brain is producing. And
Right.
see, this is where we would have a difference of naturalism versus something more Jungian, probably, and more in some type of metaphysical, philosophical view. I don't think consciousness exists apart from the brain.
Right.
I don't think consciousness exists apart from whatever the thing is experience.
Mhm.
And so I don't think experience exists apart from the thing that's experiencing it. And I
Mhm.
know that's,
Mhm.
but then again, I start with
Yeah.
a more natural,
Right.
ground up.
Right. In any of these, I think that any of these conversations, let me just suggest this at least, that posit the thing outside of humans as some sort of entity in and of itself. Well, that's not entirely true, but like that's, I'm feeling like the Jungian, like if that is actually true to Jungian view, that consciousness is an external
I
thing
don't know.
pre-existing or outside of humans. I kind of just go back to that same old idea of that sounds very slightly modern view of God instead of dramatically different and separate. Right, like people talking about God as outside of us and we have to appeal to it, and and we seek the strength from outside of ourselves, that God has to give it to us and that consciousness is outside of us. Is that true? I just don't know that I make sense of consciousness aside from human.
I think Jung had some interesting ideas,
Yeah.
and like looking for patterns and seeing synchronicities and things like that, where
Sure.
there's this assumption that we're finding that consciousness is reflecting in the world around us because all of a sudden an epiphany or whatever might have hit us. So in the brain, we're thinking we're finding it out there now that
Mhm.
the universe is talking to us. It's this thing.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
I would flip it. I would flip
Mhm.
it and say,
Mhm.
this is the product of our brain, and we are pattern seeking creatures that are finding these connections, these numbers, these patterns, whatever it might be. So I think we're talking, even though we have different ways of describing it, I think we're
Mhm.
all trying to say something. And this is why your whole point in saying, let's redefine God, we're still using language that's common. We're trying to find common ground. We find the value in mythology and stories and all of these things. We can still use these categories and terms and apply them to ourselves. We just have a different way in how we're approaching this thing. And I would
Mhm.
say I'm trying to take a scientific approach and try to
Mhm.
do the best I can
Mhm.
with observable, testable things like that.
Mhm.
Jung
Mhm.
might have had a little bit of a more esoteric approach to the world. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm. Fair.
was that a proper, respectable response, you think?
I think so. I think so.
I
Fair
hope
better.
that you,
It's better than I
like,
could have done.
no, I doubt
I'm
it.
not I'm not, up on Jung
I don't know much either. I've heard some, though,
Yeah.
in passing.
Mhm.
So thank you, Edgar. Sid Dave is back. Why did European paganism lose out to Christianity? Was it forcible conversions or political pressure, or Christianity was simply better? I would recommend seeing The Northman, as it shows the Norse religion.
Yeah, I saw that, and I remember thinking that would be interesting to have a better understanding of Norse religions. I mean, I think it's. I'm not going to agree that Christianity is better, so I'm just going to say that I do think it's the first two, right? Forcible conversions, political pressure. I mean, you also have the issue of assimilation, right? There's the
Right.
oh goodness, this tradition has a lot of followers, and we're in contention with them, and let's adapt their light ceremony in the middle of winter. Let's give that a good name. Associate with our God, and our God's better than your God because look.
I wonder if there is something, when we say is Christianity was simply better, I wonder if there's something morally to say about this, because as far as I understand in the pagan world, because it's talking about European paganism, I'm going to grant that this is Roman as well, because just trying to at least give it that much credence. The idea of adopting children, like Greeks would just have kids, and literally some of these kids would grow up in little kind of street gangs in their own little I was neglected by parents, and Christians would adopt children, a practice. I don't know if there's historically other people that did this, but I've heard people make the case that early Christians said God adopted us, so we'll take care of this child. This idea that they're kind of like stepping in as adoption for children and the poor, and they had kind of a practical morality in a way that probably wasn't practiced the same way in the pagan world. So there's a reflection here. We're kind of up to speed in terms of good morality in comparison to our foes, but that doesn't mean that it's figured out like this is the example for all time in every respect of morality. I'm just making the point, maybe they weren't ruthless savages, going through from one village to the next, raping and pillaging people and taking their stuff, as you see in the Viking series on the History Channel, where they're doing these things. That might be something there. I don't know. I'm speaking for Vikings, and I'm speaking for the very ruthless, hardcore, sword wielding. I don't know, because I really don't know, because Christianity also did stuff like this. They had swords to the throats of
Exactly.
people.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
Well, yeah. And when I think of when I read European paganism, I think of very natural, connections to nature, connections to seasons. I think of a lot of different just people, native and people kinds of practices. So I don't personally go to Vikings when I hear that.
Well, you did mention Norse mythology, but at the bottom, so I don't know.
It's fine.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think it's an interesting question. I don't know. I'm not well versed in this particular kind of a question, and the conversion of, or the takeover of European countries with Christian thought. Like, I think that it takes place in different ways in different parts of Europe, historically speaking. But I think that it's a pretty safe bet that part of the issue is when you have a powerful group of people who have this is their religious tradition, and they come trouncing through town. I just think that's a big piece of it.
Pretty common sense. I mean, you know what? You win. I'm not arguing it.
Well, but if you think about all the people over the centuries who are like nature, or who've been labeled things like witch, or have been labeled things, but they're really people who just get how the world works, and they're usually really well connected to seasons and cycles and plants and herbs and like natural, and they get demonized, and so I don't know. I just don't have a better answer, but that's where I'm coming from.
Sid, thank you for the
Thank you,
chat,
Sid.
my friend. Joni is back. Spinoza. Isn't the overturn of Roe versus Wade a theonomist law of Catholic theology, and the belief that the soul, consciousness, persona being created at conception, also patriarchal?
Mm-hmm. Oh, although I would need to, I think I know what you mean by theonomist law of Catholic theology. Okay, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, a theonomist law that feels a little bit redundant. God law, nomist, theonymist, theonomist, God law. But so aren't we? I think the question's saying, aren't we essentially reflecting Catholic theology that has this belief that soul conscious persona is created conception?
What do you think's behind the whole trying to overturn Roe versus Wade? I mean, it's got to be there must be a religious fervor. I can't imagine there not being a religious fervor, because the idea of it being theonomist laws, like making the law of the land a Christian law kind of thing, and that's the point I think they're trying to get at. What do you think? I mean, I'm not big in politics, but what do you think? Do you think there's something to
I do. I mean, I think that there are a handful of ideas that are associated with conservative Christian constructs and ideas that we have been seeing being attacked in lots of different ways in the last 6 years, and so I have some strong beliefs about the way the Catholic Church doesn't talk honestly on this conversation. I actually taught at a Catholic institution and got in trouble. And I understand why I got in trouble. I thought it was understandable, but I also have a hard time with people who are not able to have a complex conversation about what's going on here. So the idea that something is alive when the two cells come together and it starts dividing and multiplying, it is alive. The question that's being posed here or being highlighted is it the fact that people believe that a soul or consciousness is being created at conception? I'm not certain that that's on people's minds. I think it's tapping into this other pool of almost rabid conservative belief systems that taps into a lot of different ideas and does draw upon a fairly literalistic way of reading the Bible. Mm-hmm. My sense is that most people haven't stopped to actually have an honest conversation with someone who has, for instance, maybe had an abortion and has some perspective on that experience and what people who've been pregnant are going through, and the handful of elements that are just central to this conversation. It drives me batty that people talk about like the way it's talked about. So I'm trying to stick with a question and not get off on my own little soapbox, because that's not
well. Can I wrap this particular question up in saying,
yeah, please,
stick around, and here's why. You are going to be having a conversation / discussion / debate ish on these issues coming later on. When July 1st? July 1st. Mm-hmm. So it will be you and a Christian apologist girl that will be having this debate. Mm-hmm. And as we get closer, I'll make that thumbnail and have it all set up so people can see. And that I hope it's a conversation that really lets people hear what's going on and why people think the way they do. So Johnny, thank you.
Johnny, let me just be really direct and clear. Absolutely patriarchal. Absolutely coming out of this is why I talk about the concept, the topic of abortion when I teach the biblical intros, because the example there is about women as baby makers and men in control of women and women's bodies. And that's precisely what we're seeing play out. I think to be really direct, right? Women as baby makers, the uterus is ahead of the woman as a person, and men controlling that woman and her, in her body. That's what's happening. And that's very much a patriarchal framework and scenario.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Johnny. Yes. Shannon Q in the house says, you and Paul share a birthday. I did not know his birthday was tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. Ronnie S., why do people say that Christians, Jews, Muslims believe in the same God? don't they think Jews will accept? Hold on. Don't think
Mhm.
any Jews will accept that
Yeah.
they believe the same God as Christians, and
Right.
Christians won't accept that the Trinity is the same as Allah.
Exactly. And the way Allah is defined within within Islam is different. And no, thank you, Ronnie. I'm right there with you. And it's actually a thing that I tend to talk about in classes is no. We define this God different. These three traditions define the God differently. You
Right.
relate to the God differently. The whole purpose or getting to the ultimate goals and ideas are different. Judaism is about fixing this world. Christianity is about getting to heaven. Quran, Islam is a different thing, and they're all using different, formulas, all different formulas, different God. Yep. Nope. With you. Drives me crazy.
Thank you so
I
much.
think people try to say that to try to create like this inter-religious conversation, and I think those can be really helpful conversations. It's just not my thing because I'm kind of a text person, and I really care about like, people misunderstanding and using. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Ron.
Yeah, I think the conversation's needed. There is commonality since they all try to share similar traditions,
Right?
or at least Christianity and Islam tries to at least share some similar traditions that they have in common, at least. And so, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Abel, thank you for the super chat. Is the Abrahamic religions more like the Satan to the other religions, perhaps, and the human worshippers are like the actors? Look at the wars and bloodshed. Maybe it's right on our face. It's almost like a modern Marcionite approach, like look how bad this God of Abraham is. And
I see what you're saying there. Yep. Yeah. Are the Abrahamic religions more like the Satan to other religious traditions? Is that what's being said there? Like the Abrahamic is kind of evil, and that the human worshippers are like the actors.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, okay, yeah. It's an interesting question, first of all, and I certainly resonate with the thing you're pointing out about all the wars and bloodshed, and I'm not sure about maybe it's right on our face. I'm not sure I'm tracking with all of that. Like, I think.
Hold on, let me get it off. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think what you're saying is, maybe we should pay attention to what's happening here. Do other religious traditions look at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and say, what the hell is wrong with them? Is that what you're asking, Abel? I don't know.
I think so. I do. I just think I don't know why Marcion came to mind, because it's like, this is ugly, this is bad. And it seems that whoever wrote John seems to think that about Jews. You are of your father, the devil. The Greek, according to M. David Little, he says it makes more sense. And it wasn't just him, as other academics. You are of the father of the devil in John, I think it was. Is this a jab at the Jewish God, and that the God of Jesus is different? Maybe Marcion got his ideas from something that might have had a gospel, something like this. I don't know. I'm just making the point that this seems like the Abrahamic God and the religion of the Abrahamic traditions looks bad to the others. But, you can say the same thing in many respects to others as well, probably. I mean, there's humans just do things.
But I do appreciate, right, the calling things out, and let's be honest about the fact that Christianity, though most people on the planet today who are Christians, most are just love, like want this to be about love and forgiveness and kindness, and I think that's important and good. It's not historically what it's been about. It isn't also textually what it's about, and it isn't also doctrinally. Like when you look at the doctrines, they aren't all kind and good and loving, and they don't all play out that well. And some of the more progressive denominations still have ideas on their books that are very harmful to people. So I always appreciate when people want to say, hey, wait a minute.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. DBR, thank you for the super sticker, my friend. Did you have a comment? I did not see a comment. Uh-oh. Did I miss you? Okay. It updated, so it kind of threw me off there. Thank you for that super sticker. Really appreciate you. Robert Herring says, God's a guy. Women would never F it up like this. Robert, you're the man.
You're right.
You know what? There's some things we men are right. And right now, let's just admit it.
I will toast you on that. Yes.
Doc Florma, not off topic, but would dig your response. Thoughts on Deborah's story, early social implications. Was her prophetic judging role public or private, official or unofficial, an egalitarian precedent for women in leadership?
Well,
question.
It is an interesting question. And I would say, I have no reason to think it wasn't public. So very, very brief reference in the scripture to it. And I have no reason to question that it was public. Thoughts on the early social implications. I mean, I think it's a really fun, partly because I've been showing this. I have a friend named Peterson Toscano, and he did a video series, or he did a series called Transfigurations, Transgressing Gender in the Bible. You do have to pay for it, but you can get it on Amazon Prime. I reference it because Deborah's character is one of them that he embodies, and he portrays her as a woman who might not identify strictly as woman, because look at the things she is doing in that ancient context that she might actually have identified maybe beyond the binary, or as both or neither or something. And, I think that can be problematic because it's saying that women can't be strong and intelligent and all these different things. But also it's a possibility that there is an interesting subversion going on there. I don't know. So is there an egalitarian precedent for women in leadership? I'm sure Doc is actually just putting that out there, because I'm sure that a lot of people do try to refer to Deborah as an example of why women should get to be leaders in religious traditions.
Of course.
Yeah. So
this goes back to Robert. I mean, you want to screw things up, or do you want to get things right? You know what I mean? Got to have women in charge. No, but
but it is just a fleeting one chapter story. I mean, there are all kinds of things about this and she's only talked about really in terms of leading into battle. That's also problematic, like.
Yeah, she's a badass.
Well, she's kind of a badass. I'm not going to deny that. I'm all in favor of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I doubt that was common though.
Right. Exactly. No, I think that's right. But, it's also just interesting that she and Yael show up in Judges 4 and 5, and Yael's this great, is she actually a good example for women? Because she knows how to seduce for bigger purposes, and that's a good thing. It's lots of women have to do that, and then she drives a tent peg into his forehead.
That's
like,
right.
But hey, but I'm also, like, violence not so great, and yet you got to do what you got to do. Like, it's all complicated. But you're asking about Deborah, not Yael. And, was this kind of like Cashapp, like she got in because she kind of behaved like a man, and so they were comfortable with her being a leader. They could trust her because she had a deep voice and she was really smart and stronger than the rest. I don't know. Like, I don't need it to be one way or the other, is my point.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Doc, for the super chat. Seriously, always enjoy them. They're hard to read sometimes, but I still love you. X and Music says,
love that.
Great show. All of your best recent scholars have been women.
That's nice.
Thank you, X and Music. I really appreciate that. I hope you don't mind this next one. Out of respect, just Sheepwork says, sub to Miss Bird because she's cute and I like older women. Yeah. I hope you appreciate it.
I do, actually. Mm-hmm.
We got to wrap things up here, guys. We really do. Thank you so much. John Kieran says,
John.
Isn't there a sense that God was created as a way to explain the world and how it worked, which grew into a way of justifying one's own actions? Now, centuries later, we're dealing with the fallout of believing what went before, but also having to deal with what science and philosophy and the general advancement of humanity has taught us.
Yep.
So we have a God developed by a very different humanity that we have to make it fit into who and what we are today.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a nice summary in a sense of what happened, historically speaking, right? All of those pieces. And we are trying as humanity, or humans, many of us at least are, right, to develop, grow in our thoughts and our understandings and embrace what we're learning.
Thank you, John, for the support. Seriously.
Very nice. Yeah,
appreciate
nice to see you, John.
Constellation Pegasus, any opinions on the American phenomenon Adventist movements beginning with William Miller? They were a help on breaking the church's power over people, which was a good thing. Unfortunately, Jehovah's Witnesses became a splinter group, which survives.
I have to be very honest. I am familiar with all the things you've just referenced in this question or comment, and I don't have a whole lot more beyond that, right?
Yeah.
I think that there was a lot of space for female leadership, for women in leadership within the Adventist movements, at least initially. Obviously, Jehovah's Witnesses is a different element of that, but there are a lot of strong women that came with that movement, or that came along with that movement. And William Miller, I have very, very little in my mind about him, except didn't he? Right. He did. He predicted the end, like in the mid 1800s or so.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, opinions on him.
Yeah.
I don't know much about him other than the predictions that were made coming out of the burned over district in New York. They had these like revivalist movements and the apocalyptic ideas, fervor for the New Testament, all that.
Yep.
They were a help on breaking the church's power over people, which was a good thing. Fortunately, 100%, because Constellation Pegasus came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And when it comes to apocalypticism, I think, like, when I do a show about that, Constellation Pegasus, I'm getting on. Like, it's like he knows that I'm talking about it. Like, that's the whole thing of Jehovah's Witnesses. Sense. Yeah. Spidey. Thank you so much for that big super chat, Constellation. For real. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Email me if you have any questions or anything. Of course, I always appreciate your support. Mr. Monster, thank you for being a member. Did you hear about that church in Tennessee that lost its tax-exempt status? Should the government be separate from the religion?
Do I have to comment on this?
I don't care to comment. I mean, I should be a 501c3 then, you know? Like, I'm forgiving sins. Why not, you know? I know.
I did hear about it. Gosh, it's hard. And the separation of church and state. Yeah. But separation of church and state is about protecting your religious beliefs. It's not about protecting the state from your religion. This is the thing that most people, I think, don't often stop to think about. We do want to protect our, keeping these things separate, but it's not that simple. But should the government be respecting this kind of thing as being special? I think that's really what the question is asking. And I do wonder about that.
Yeah.
How was that for a non-answer answer?
There you go, Mr. Monster. Sit in ambiguity.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah.
Last one, Abel. Right. Thank you for the super chat. Sometimes I think all religions somehow are working together our reincarnation process and beginning to happen starting from the East. Maybe many gods, many lives. One God, only one life.
Somehow working toward our reincarnation process. I mean, I think that's interesting, right? I think that's an interesting thought, interesting pieces to bring together. I do think that the belief in reincarnation, I think, is really interesting and leads people to, I think, at times having really interesting reflections on life and how they make sense of the current life they're in, if they believe they've had previous lives, right? I don't challenge that belief because I have no idea about that, right? I just know that even connecting God and reincarnation gets tricky.
Yeah. I think the weirdest thing I think about at times, and this kind of seems more like a weird statement. I don't mean anything offensive by it because I think of weird things too. But like the weirdest thing I think about is like, what if this is all a dream? What if I like wake up and go, whoa, what the hell was that? I mean, I went through addiction for years and like, what is this? Anyway, thank you, Abel, for the super chat. Give a special shout out to Dr. Jennifer Bird. I posted the website. I pinned her YouTube channel. Let's refresh it, and just to make sure that some people knocked off some of those
your followers are being obedient.
Let's just make sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to hurt some people now. It's not.
I appreciate it. It will be higher tomorrow. I know it will be because it always is
Okay.
when I come in here.
Are you asking me to be a merciful?
I am. Let me talk you down from your wrathful
response. I am a jealous God, though, I must admit. So,
Thank you
for real, though, I hope that we can get some subscribers to go and subscribe to Dr. Jennifer Bird's YouTube channel. Help her out in what she's doing. Oh, let me take down the super chat. I apologize. I didn't even notice that was still up. Please go help her out by joining, subscribing, checking out her content, liking on her videos, playing the videos, even if you're not able to help the algorithm pick up, boost the channel. She has a website, jennifergracebird.com. It is in the description of this video. Here's the video I posted earlier in case you go up in the chat and see it. These are some of the books we referenced along the way. I did put them on MythVision's recommended book list.
Nice.
So that anybody can go. Battling the Gods, of course, was one I recognized. And then here's Breaking Up with God, a love story we didn't really get into.
Didn't. I totally forgot about that. But Sarah Santilles is a delightful human. And she essentially brings in, for people who want a much deeper dive into the Christian theological tradition and the development of thought, that brought in philosophical and very heavy but important moves and shifts within the Christian tradition. She's essentially came from a conservative or evangelical, background and went on to PhD work in ethics, and at Harvard. And this is the most delightful book on essentially this whole conversation about critical thinking, engaging with this topic of the idea of God.
Wow.
So, anyway, yeah, it's a profound. Yeah.
I did add it to the recommended list. If you just go and click the button, it has all sorts of books that I recommend from MythVision.
Excellent.
And it's all down there in the description. And then last of all, I have the Patreon. I just did this one, Augustus, Savior of the World. In this, I highlight interesting evidence from Suetonius and other works. This is just the latest one that I just did. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm satisfied with this video because I want to compare, why do we cherish this one story of Jesus when we have all of these writings contemporaneous to the Gospels of stories floating around about demigods and birth narratives and ascensions, apotheosis, miracles in this life. You name all this stuff here about this guy, Augustus. And we're believing Jesus really happened, but this didn't happen for him. And we know with 100% confidence that this guy exists.
Right.
We have a good if we're talking probability, it's on a different level.
Totally.
Different level. So please join MythVision's Patreon. I've worked very hard. This is another one. I mean, I do a lot of work and I conversate and I create a community where your sins are forgiven. I mean, just, I always have to bring it up just to remind you, because who wants to go to hell? I mean, do you want to risk it? Anyway, enough of that. Seriously, I had to be silly. Oh, wow, we did get a big old super chat from my buddy Critical Faculty.
Oh.
Happy birthday, mate.
Nice.
He is in Australia, so that is why he said the word mate.
Mate.
In case you're wondering.
And he just
I'm sorry.
He just bought your movie tickets for tomorrow.
He literally did. I got to pull up his YouTube channel because I get a shame and guilt. I think our audience has the same problem. I get a guiltful shame and I have to at least plug their channel. You have to subscribe to Critical Faculty. Not only is he doing work in English and talking about science and stuff. Well, I say that because he's from Egypt. And he's teaching these things, and he's like us in how he treats people of faith and treats people across. He's so respectful, but he's also teaching Muslims often in Arabic. He's teaching these things, and he's having these deep, tough questions and dialogues with the other people from different cultures and different religions. Please show my friend some love. Thank you for the birthday wish and the super chat. Final words from you. Sorry, I apologize.
No, this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate you having me on again to have this conversation, and I've enjoyed it. I think I'm coming at this from I'd love to help people get beyond, some ideas that are actually holding them back without them necessarily being aware of it being that. So trying to shift the conversation a little bit is part of what I'm interested in. So I hope I contributed to that a little bit for some folks tonight.
I think you did. I do. I really do. And I always enjoy having you on.
Thank you.
It's a blast. I can't
It's
wait till
really
we have
fun.
that conversation in July 1st, but maybe, and we might be able to do it again before then. I don't know. There's so much to talk about.
There
so
is.
Keep watching. Check
Thanks
out
for
her
having me.
channel. Yes, thank you. Please get her books. I forgot to mention that. Plugging
It's okay.
that.
I didn't send it because, we're going to talk about it at some point, right?
We are. I think that's necessary, but I do want to plug that as well. I'm sorry. I know you're tired. This has been a heck of a journey, but I do want everybody to see it because seeing is believing.
But tasting is proof.
Right? Permission granted.
Yeah.
Take the Bible into your own hands. Dr. Bird has it on Audible. You can listen to it. You can get a paperback, Kindle.
And in the Audible, just so you know, I also read a whole bunch of biblical passages that I'm referencing in the text. So it actually, you get to hear those being read, which is different than the way some people read biblical passages. I'll just say that. A little more engaged.
I love that. That's your style too. You're really down to earth and people can tell. And we're trying our best to understand how we can bridge these gaps like you're talking about today with God. And I really appreciate that. Really do. Gosh, someone super chatted again. Look, we're on our way out, but
I know.
What the heck's happening? Why did she claim God can be defined as change, not get challenged by you? So this is a question to me. I mean, what are we talking about when we say God? This is the tough part, RB. So why did it not get challenged by you? I don't think it was a challenge. I think that the way I would have defined it, if I was going to redefine it, would be experience.
Yeah, I get that.
Existence. But what is there to challenge? I mean, help me out, RB. What is there to challenge, my friend? I don't know. How would you understand this super chat?
Well, change, defining God as change, is different from a little bit different from being a naturalist. I'm assuming that's part of what's going on here for RB. Knowing you a little bit, knowing that you use the label atheist. But again, the whole conversation today was trying to say that label atheist is really, really not helpful because it begins with the premise of, I don't believe what you believe. And I want to come have a different conversation altogether. And that's part of what I think you're also doing. I mean, you're talking through it or whatever. So why did you not challenge that particular definition? Maybe partly also because it's not like I'm hanging a whole lot on it. I'm just offering it as a new way of kind of getting beyond all the anthropomorphic. Sorry about that. Okay. All the anthropomorphic ideas and, transactional and, wrathful and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't have to challenge because we already defined early on. You probably weren't here early on, and that might be why. But we already had defined what the typical definition for God would be or gods would be, and then we're trying to move out of that category of the typical definition while still using the same language to try and come up with, well, if they have all these different gods, they don't even mean the same thing by them. Oftentimes, why can't we redefine it? And that's what I think was the point we were both throwing up. Well, why didn't you challenge me on the existence definition? So I think it was just, I don't know. We're just finding something we can say, okay, we can agree to something here in some way, but we're not thinking of it in it's an entity or it is some mind being type thing. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question, RB. And, I'm not a mean challenge kind of guy. I try to be kind. No, try to be nice. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like button, comment down below, let YouTube know that MythVision's on the scene and we're forgiving sins no matter what you've done. And never forget, we are MythVision.